the first meeting of the new school committee for 2019 through 2020. At this time, I would like a roll call. Ms. Nash?
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Ms. Neary?
Here.
Mrs. Boatright?
Here.
Ms. Folin?
Here.
Dr. Flowers?
Present.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Mrs. Sylvia?
Here.
All right, and I'd like everyone to please stand for the pledge to the flag, and Mrs. Bolin will start us off this evening.
Wait till everybody stands. Okay, good. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to have a moment of silence. Thank you.
So we'll have the moment of silence. Please keep the following individuals who have passed away in your thoughts and prayers. Bob Tedford, brother-in-law of Vincent Butler, plant engineer at Pell. Roger Zerba, uncle of Caitlin White, grade 4 teacher at Pell. Kathleen Cordero, aunt of Kate O'Neill, grade 3 teacher at Pell. We'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm seeking nominations for Chair of the Newport Public School Committee.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
since August, Mr. Raymond Gomes, who was Vice Chair, assumed the position of Chair and has done an excellent job, and I therefore move that he be appointed Chair for the next year.
Thank you. There's a nomination for Raymond Gomes. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Bolin. Are there any other nominations at this time for Chair of the Newport Public School Committee? Are there any other nominations for Chair for the Newport Public School Committee? Last call. Any nominations for Chair of the Newport Public School Committee? The nominations are closed. Congratulations, Mr. Gomes. You are the Chair of the Newport Public School Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and I look forward to a good year. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, you have to cast one vote at some point. Somebody would do that?
All right, let's have a vote. Thank you, Mr. Leary. Let's cast the vote then. All those in favor of Raymond Gomes as Chair? The vote is 7-0. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Leary.
Okay, so I'll take over, and the next order of business would be the appointment of a vice chair for the school year. Is there any nominations for the position of vice chair?
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Ida Neary, who was our top vote getter this year. She did an incredible job of campaigning and coming on board, and so I would like to make that nomination.
Okay, the nomination for Ida Neary as vice chair by Mrs. Bolin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Flowers. Any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. Ida Neary will assume the position as vice chair for the school year. The next order is a motion to move a couple of items on the agenda, I believe.
Yes, I would like to move that we change the order tonight and start with 1 and then go to 3 and 4, and that we move public comment to after we do awards and recognitions.
There's a motion made by Mrs. Boland to move items 3 and 4 on the agenda ahead of public comment for this evening. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. So that would move, number 3 would be student activities. And I
don't know if Annie's here.
okay.
Annie Murphy? I don't believe she's here.
Ani
Is she-
Murphy?
Ani? I don't believe she's here. She's at track.
Okay, so we have, there's no student council representative, so the next order of business would move into recognition of the RHS girls volleyball team. The girls volleyball team completed their regular season with a 15-2 record, earning the regular season Division IIIB title. In the playoffs, the team defeated Narragansett 3-1 after losing the first game, coming back to win 3 consecutive games. In the Division III state championship, the girls avenged one of their regular season losses by defeating St. Raphael's Academy 3-2. The team needed yet another comeback after being down 0-2 to the Saints. This is the program's second regular season and state championship in the past 3 years. The team is coached by Erin McGloin and assistant coach Madison Walker. The team manager was Hannah Riley. So if the team members would come forward as we call your name to give out the certificates. Okay, well, I'll call their names out. If they want to come tonight, they can, are there some here this evening? Oh, sure, so we'll call their names, and the others, we can give you the certificate. So I have here, the first one is Sophie Breitenbach, grade 9. Catherine Capreas, grade 11. Julia Demore, grade 10. Mariana May, grade 10. Kiana McCants, grade 12, is a team captain. Kelly McGinn, grade 12. Mia Moika, grade 12 as well. Nicole Rodricks, grade 11. Catherine Straka, grade 11. I see Catherine out there. Congratulations. Jamie Ward, and grade 10. And Shannon Ward, grade 12, another team captain as well. So we also have recognition this evening for the girls' volleyball coach. Let me just get back to that. Erin McGloin was recently named Coach of the Year for 2018. Coach McGloin led the girls, as we said, to a 15-2 regular season record in the Division IIIB title. And for her efforts, she was recognized as the Coach of the Year for 2018. So congratulations, Coach.
Erin's going to come up.
You get to come up and be on TV as well. So.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest that you have Erin and the girls stand for the television crew?
Absolutely. If they'd like to get a picture of the girls that are here this evening, if you'd like to come up with your coach and have your picture taken, that's a great idea.
Erin may want to say something too.
I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for supporting us throughout the season. We had such a good group of girls this year, very athletic, very hard workers, and thanks to Jim for doing everything for us whenever we asked you to. And I'm really excited to continue this for hopefully next season.
Thank you very much.
Nice job, Erin.
So then we would move back, with those items being done, the next item we'd move back to is public comment. Has anybody signed up this evening for public comment?
Yes, we have one signed up for public comment, Mr. Ron Toribio.
Good evening. My name is Rob Toribio. I'm a Newport resident, a second grade teacher here at Pell, and most importantly, the parent of a sixth grader at Thompson and a first grader here at Pell. I'm standing here before you today to voice my concerns and questions about this new breakfast initiative being implemented in January here at Pell. For those that do not know, the new initiative is going to force every classroom teacher from kindergarten to fourth grade to supply breakfast in the classroom to every student who would like to eat it, as well as eliminate hot breakfast and all breakfast in the cafeteria altogether in the morning. I have two main concerns with this new plan. First, as a Newport taxpayer and parent, this is not acceptable to giving our children. So this is an example of what they give the children in the morning. Here is one of 4 different packaged breakfasts that are given to students in the classroom. What happened to health and wellness? These prepackaged meals are not healthy. I am in no way a nutritionist, but am concerned at the lack of healthy value of these breakfasts. At least when they had hot breakfast in the cafeteria, the children could have eggs or some kind of meat. Now we are going to eliminate that entirely. My other concern is as a teacher and parent. I teach second grade and do breakfast in the classroom. I was curious, so I timed my students from the time they sat down with their breakfast until the time that the last few students finished. It took my second graders, who are 7 to 8 years old, an average of about 45 minutes to complete their breakfast and clean up. That was with, of course, many prompts to keep eating and helping a few students open packages and no spills. Now my daughter is a first grader. She likes to be independent, but still needs help opening things. So how long is it going to take them? A first grade classroom full of up to 24 students with only one adult in the classroom to finish breakfast. The amount of instructional time teachers have to teach everything that they need to teach is already short enough as it is. Now we're asking them to do breakfast in the classroom for an hour at least, fingers crossed that there are no spills that happen in a first grade or kindergarten classroom, and still hold them accountable to teach the same amount of content is not fair to teachers or students. So, to finish, I'm going to ask a few questions, and hopefully you can answer them today. First question is, where did the idea to eliminate hot breakfast or breakfast in the cafeteria altogether and force all grades to do breakfast in the classroom come from, and why? What do we do with students with allergies in our classroom? Are we expected to study all of the labels and content of the breakfast before serving them? Have parents been notified of this change and exactly what their child or children are about to be given for breakfast? And then what can teachers stop teaching now that we have to devote an hour or more to breakfast in the classroom? Thank you. Would anybody like to take a look at least, if you're interested?
Yeah, sure. Pass them along. So just to, as we know, just for the audience out there, and Mr. Trevero, the public comment's meant to bring something to our attention. Unfortunately, we can't address specific questions because it's a violation of the open meeting laws, that it wasn't on the agenda for this evening. So, but what I encourage you to do is leave your questions with the superintendent, and that we'll get the answers to those. I think Ms. Boland wants to say something. She can certainly respond, but just so you know, we can't respond to the public comment, but we could give information on it perhaps.
All right, thank you.
I want to say that, if in fact we need some kind of a workshop or to explain, because this is actually an initiative coming from the Health and Wellness Group, and so we would like to take an opportunity to maybe have some kind of a forum so parents and teachers, can tell us about their concerns in the near future. So that's what I just want to make sure that you guys, everybody had an opportunity to voice their concerns, and we also tell you what we're thinking on this subject.
Okay.
Because I have all your answers.
Is there any other public comment, Mrs. Nash? Okay. We'll move on to the next item is section 5, which is presentations, and this evening, the first presentation is a presentation with the Fuse Architect work that's going on at TMS. And I believe Maeve Murray from the Highlander Institute and Elizabeth Gibbs, a grade 7th teacher from TMS, will be giving us a presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Bean was not able to make this evening, so I'm just going to read what she left on this. Fuse, Rhode Island was launched by the Highlander Institute in 2014. Fuse, Rhode Island promotes blended and personalized learning by working with educators across the state. Fuse Rhode Island Fellows, who are all current Rhode Island educators, collaborate with participating districts to implement the best blended and personalized learning practices based on each specific district's needs and goals. And we have our Teacher of the Year, Ms. Gibbs, up there, and from Highlander, you're going to introduce yourself and share out all the great news. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. My name is Maeve Murray, and as you mentioned, I am the program manager of the Fuse RI Fellowship, which is run by the Highlander Institute, an education nonprofit based in Providence. So happy to be here to share more about our great work in partnership with Newport Public Schools. If you could forward along, we do have some accompanying slides, and we'll try to stick to the 5 minutes. We could share about this program for the whole time, though. It's been so lovely to work with the Newport educators. At Highlander Institute, we have 4 main guiding principles. We'd like to find and implement the best practices in our schools in Rhode Island because that is where the heart of our work is. We activate and advocate for these teacher leaders to empower them as leaders without leaving their classrooms full-time because we believe that the best education movements are at the grassroots level. And we address gaps across levels of the student and educator experience by trying our best to act as a trusted translator between the educators and the administration. A 4th one that is not listed on here is that power of cross-collaboration that Colleen mentioned. We believe that a network of educators across our small but mighty state is what is going to be the thing that leads to lasting and sustainable change. So we do focus on blended, which just means incorporating some purposeful technology with face-to-face experiences to personalize education for students, allowing students to move at a pace that works for them, differentiating and scaffolding instruction, and building opportunities for students to bring their whole selves, experiences, identities, and choices and voice into the classroom. Across the state, we have over 100 fellows now in the 5th year of our program. We've worked with 39 of the 66 local education agencies across the state, and we have over 200 pilot teachers, like Ms. Gibbs here, who are our partners actively being coached by our Fuse fellows. So these are the faces of your 3 fellows that have worked with Newport at both Pell and Thompson over the past year, and now we're into our 2nd year because it is a 2-year program. We intentionally cross-collaborate, so Joe, Brooke, Ashley, and Crystal are from 3 different districts outside of Newport, Foster Gloucester, Cumberland, and East Providence, respectively. We find this opens up a fresh perspective so that they can share best practices and perhaps things to avoid that they've tried in their own classrooms and contexts as they coach Newport educators. They provide 5 days per school year where they're leaving their own classrooms and schools to engage in this coaching process. They've helped guide a vision and priority practices for Newport, and like I've mentioned several times, they're coaching the 10 teachers in Pell and Newport, Thompson, who have raised their hands. I'm not going to read this slide thoroughly, but we have shared with you on the collateral resources the exact vision and priorities that were chosen, specifically around self-pacing for students, problem solving, critical thinking, and having choices in how they demonstrate mastery in the classroom. And then I'm going to have Elizabeth speak to the pilot teacher perspective in this.
Okay, and in addition to me, we have at least 3 Fuse teachers here. We have Tina Brownell, Kayla Pamucci, and Kate Dussel from Thompson and Pell. So I have found this an incredibly enriching experience, and I think my students have also gotten a lot out of it. As Maeve was referring to, the goals of making students feel, helping students feel more a part of the classroom, having more voice and choice in their own education. Being able to move at their own pace has been incredibly important. I feel this year more than ever that I've been able to personalize instruction for a number of students, not only those who need additional supports and more of my time one-on-one, but those who are ready to move on. Some of the students I've been giving middle school, 8th grade, or even high school curriculum as for certain activities. So I think it's been very powerful, and I wanted to emphasize that if you're familiar with this at all, it does use the Chromebooks, but it's really about instruction rather than technology, but the technology has helped us a lot to really move this instruction forward. And another really important component of it is the sharing among teachers. I give one quick example that among the FUSE teachers in about a 15-minute brainstorm, we came up with a document that had 60 different ideas that we could share with one another and use instantly. And we're doing the same thing on a district-wide level with professional development, offering it for other teachers who are not part of the program, and also school-wide professional development. So the student response has really been positive on measures of working independently, being able to move forward, taking some ownership over their learning, and this is especially important for adolescents. At Thompson, we've been working on a number of fronts to try to personalize learning, and I think this is having a big effect. So we do have a few quick pictures that we can scroll through. The school committee has this. You have links that you can go to if any of you have had a chance to see it. You can see what playlists, the rich activities, for example, that Mrs. Dussel is offering for her ELA students. And in Pell, the teachers are really laying the groundwork for this work, which will help kids develop skills that will carry them not just through Newport Public Schools, but into their college and career lives. It's a very powerful program from my perspective.
The hope is that at the end of these 2 years together with Pell and Thompson, we will see this spread and have teachers like Ms. Gibbs sharing their knowledge and expertise with the larger school community. And it is actually exciting that we are partnering this year to start 2 years with Rogers High School around this. So Principal Vance has been the point person for that. And we have 6 new pilot teachers that are starting this work, and we're very excited. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the school committee? Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next item up is an update on the scheduling and the schedule and changes made at TMS this year, and then we'll have an update. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Wrong item. Scheduling update on Rogers High School. I believe district management and, oh, great.
Sam Ribnick from District Management Group is here, along with Principal Vance, to share with you what they've been doing regarding scheduling for Rogers High School.
Thank you to the school committee for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all. My name is Sam Ribnick. I'm a senior director at the District Management Group. We're an organization based in Boston. We work with school districts across the country. We've been working with Newport Public Schools for about a year and a half now on scheduling at the middle school and the high school. And so I think there's already been some updates given in past meetings related to work at the middle school. Today I'm going to be focusing my update at Rogers High School. So as I said, we're an organization based in Boston. I want to just tell you a little bit more about District Management Group for those who aren't familiar. We were founded in 2004 to bring positive change to public school districts, and we do our work focused on these 3 lenses shown here. So first of all, what is beneficial for student outcomes? And then what helps districts be more operationally efficient and helps manage the complexity of operating a school district? And then the third piece is around resource allocation, recognizing that districts have to operate with the resources that they have available, and so solutions that work need to also be solutions that can be implemented with the available resources. And so we bring these 3 lenses to most of our work with school districts, including the work that we've been doing here in Newport. So objectives for tonight, this presentation will cover, first of all, looking at the alignment between the vision for where Rogers High School is aiming to go, and I think Principal Vance will speak more about that after my presentation. But we'll be looking at how that connects with some of the changes to the schedule that are being proposed. And then the second piece, and where our analysis comes in more substantially, is we were asked to conduct a financial analysis to understand what would be the cost implications of making the change to the schedule, just to verify, as I said earlier, that this can be implemented within the resources available to the district. So first touching on the high school vision and how that connects with some of the scheduling goals. So as part of this process, we conducted, both myself and two other members of our team, conducted focus groups with many teachers at the high school to understand what were some of the needs that they were experiencing related to the schedule and related to how the schedule could help improve with alignment and instruction. And so one key idea that we saw in focus groups is that there was a fairly shared, strong understanding of what the vision for success after high school means here in Newport. The second piece is that we heard actually not just from teachers but also from students, we heard some strengths to the current schedule. So students reported that they liked the variety of courses and also some of the different levels and opportunities for personalized learning. And then the third piece that we heard largely from staff and from parents were some perceived drawbacks to the current schedule. So people raising concerns around late start in the school day and how that impacts the ability to provide extra help after classes. Some concerns around the 7-period day and the fact that it's the same schedule every day as opposed to a rotating or cycling structure. People pointed out that that means that students who either arrive late or have to leave early for clubs and sports are always missing the same class each day. Some rotating schedules help avoid that. And then also a perspective that the current class period length of 48 minutes was too short for the type of instruction that people were aiming for. So those were some of the key ideas that we heard from our focus groups. Looking ahead, in the conversations with Principal Vance, we've learned about some of the vision for what the future of Rogers High School can look like. And so you can see the high school vision stated here, and again, I think the principal will speak more about this, but Rogers High School will empower students to think critically, engage with civility, and confidently transition to achieve citizenship in their community. So that's the vision. And then related to that are two specific goals to support the vision. One is around providing student-centered experiential learning, and the second is to increase student ownership for their learning. And I think those two things tie together very nicely. And the Rogers High School leadership is already doing some work to achieve this vision and goals, so working with the Sizer Institute to clarify that vision, provide professional development to help with shifting the way that instruction is being delivered and incorporate more innovative teaching strategies that lead to student-centered experiential learning. And then the third piece, and this is where my presentation comes in, is thinking through changes to the Rogers High School schedule that could help support this vision. And so one of the ideas that was proposed as a possible new schedule for consideration that would help support this vision is the idea of moving to what's called a 4x4 block schedule. And I'll just briefly explain for those who aren't familiar. If you went to a high school that had a 7-period schedule, you just went through your 7 periods during the day. Another common schedule format that some of you may have also experienced is what's called a 4x4 block schedule. And that's where instead there are 4 blocks during the day. Each block tends to be longer, closer to 90 minutes typically, depending on the exact length of the school day. And then that means that students only take 4 classes on a given day. There are a number of variations, sometimes the same 4 classes every day for a semester. Sometimes there's what's called an alternating A day and B day, where you take 4 classes on your A day and then a different 4 classes on your B day, which means that you're taking a total of 8 classes over the course of a semester on alternating days. And we'll get into some of the benefits of that as I proceed here. So we do a great deal of work with scheduling with districts all across the country, not only high school, but middle school and elementary as well. And that's given us the opportunity to really learn from the research around what works and what matters when it comes to scheduling. And so these here are some guiding principles that we've drawn from what's well supported in research around what really makes a difference when it comes to building a school schedule. So first of all, that it's important to align the mission and vision of a school with the schedule so that the goals that you have for teachers and what instruction can look like are well aligned to the length of the schedule period and the way the schedule is built. Second is that it's crucial that there's sufficient time devoted to core instruction. There's no magic number on this, but there is research that shows the more time spent in a subject area, that does produce greater gains for students. And so schedules that trim some of those really crucial core content areas to be too short can potentially put that at risk. It can be beneficial to provide flexibility to meet student needs. This especially ties in well with the stated vision around student-centered learning. Another piece is there's research showing that extra time for intervention for students who are struggling can be an effective strategy to help those students catch up and get back on track. And so schedules that permit for that extra intervention time can be beneficial for meeting the needs of those students. Also that districts often can structure their schedules so that the staffing required can flex up and down as enrollment moves up and down over the years. So if a district has a 5-year trend of enrollment growth, that it's easy to add teachers to the schedule. If there's a 5-year trend of enrollment decline, that you may need fewer teachers in the schedule. Some schedules are more flexible in that way than others. And then the last piece is around the benefits of having rigorous courses available for all students and recognizing some of the research around tracked courses where some students end up with lower level curriculum and the impact that that can have on the educational opportunities available to those students. So what you might notice is not on this list is research saying, here's the right answer, or here's the schedule that produces better results. And this is a long-running debate, and it's one of the questions that we most often get from districts, from school boards, from school committees is, well, just tell us which schedule is better. And the answer is there's no persuasive evidence to say that a block schedule is better or a 7-period or 8-period schedule is better. There are examples of both working well, there are examples of both working poorly, and as I said, there's no study or evidence that makes a strong case based on evidence that one schedule format produces reliably better results. What that means is the research isn't going to tell you what the right answer is, but it also means that there's opportunity to say, let's figure out what's the right answer here in Newport and make sure that we're putting the schedule to work in the best way possible for supporting the needs of our students. So this is just a little bit more of a snapshot of the difference between a 7-period and a block schedule as it would look at Rogers High School. So on the left, the 7-period schedule is sort of the past existing schedule where every day students have the same period, 1 through 7, for 48 minutes, and that's their instructional day. There's obviously a lunch inserted in there and passing periods, but we're just showing the classes here. The proposed 4x4 block schedule instead has an A day and B day format, so alternating as I described, and that's different than the 7-period schedule, which is the same every day. And so on an A day, students would have periods 1 through 4, plus a short advisory period, with each of the blocks, or the periods 1 through 4, being 82 minutes, so nearly twice the length of the current periods. On a B day, they would also have advisory, but then would have periods 5 through 8. So that means that in total, a student would take 8 courses at a time rather than 7. So again, coming back to the goal around student-centered learning and student choice, an 8-period schedule does give students more chances to take different courses during the course of high school, which often can translate to more electives. And this time also can be used in other ways related to intervention or double blocking periods, and those are, I think, decisions still to be considered. So as I said here, there are some key benefits as it relates to the vision, that if your aim is to have student-centered experiential learning, one key benefit of the block schedule that we've explored in discussions with staff and leadership here is the idea that longer class periods allow teachers to pursue a different kind of instruction that engages students more deeply than what you can typically cover in a 48-minute period, and that can have good alignment with the goal of having student-centered and experiential learning. As a former science teacher in Boston Public Schools, I can tell you it's very difficult to set up and break down a lab in 48 minutes. When you have a longer stretch of time, that gives students more chance to really take the lead on their own learning. And the second piece, as I already mentioned, is that by moving to a block schedule, students would have 8 courses that they take at any given time, which it not only creates that one additional period for more choice, but over the course of their high school experience can actually lead to substantially more student choice in their schedule, and give opportunities to direct their students opportunities to direct their own learning to a higher degree. One of the key things that we were asked to analyze in order to help make this decision was around the cost implications of moving to the schedule. And so here I'm going to get a bit into the math, so bear with me. When it comes to assessing the cost of running a schedule, one of the key factors has to do with what's called teacher utilization, which is essentially the percentage of time in the day that a teacher is teaching. And so what you'll see here is this is just the math of, in a 7-period schedule, if teachers are teaching 5, then 5 out of 7 works out to be 71% of the day. And for a 4x4 block schedule, if teachers are teaching 6 out of 8, that then is 75% of a teacher's typical day that they spend teaching. From a cost implication perspective, what you would be looking for is if there's a significant drop-off in teacher utilization, that means that there's not as much student contact time for each teacher, and that would mean that you then need more teachers in order to support the course loads of all the students. Here you see that the two numbers are actually quite similar, and if anything, the 4x4 block schedule has slightly higher utilization. What that means is that if anything, there'd be a possibility that you actually would have some extra teachers that you could focus in ways that you choose. I think realistically at a school of this size, any potential excess that would come from moving this schedule would be sort of a fraction of a teacher's time here, a fraction of a teacher's time there, and you shouldn't expect to see any full positions that are in excess as a result of this change. Therefore, our recommendation is that this change, you should expect to see it being cost neutral, which means it does not cost you anything additional to implement this schedule and can be implemented with the group of teachers and resources that you already have at the high school. There's some additional considerations that we raise often when working with districts to make the transition to a 4x4 block schedule. So one piece is to consider the implications for student schedules. As I said, that means that they can take one additional class each semester, which tends to put more emphasis on students taking electives, or there are also opportunities to think through using that extra class period to either double block a given section, which means more time in that course area, or provide intervention. So that's the sort of consideration that's still important to determine. Second piece is that we do believe that the 4x4 block schedule will work more effectively with the NACTEC and PTEC career and tech programs, and so that will allow for easier schedule coordination with those. And then the third piece is that it's important when making any sort of major change to instruction that there's sufficient professional development to help teachers make the transition. And that's true regardless of whether or not a district is reassessing their schedule, but anything that leads to meaningful changes in how instruction is delivered should come with effective professional development. And here, because one of the stated goals of moving to the longer blocks is to change the way that instruction takes place at the high school, then professional development would be a key part of that. And Rogers High School, as you see here, is already providing teachers with professional development focused on experiential learning to help make that transition possible. And then I also just wanted to illustrate for members of the committee, this is just an example of what a student schedule might look like, just to get more of a flavor of how this would play out. So if you imagine in the present day, a student might have for 4 periods what we call the core classes, so some form of English language arts, science, social studies, and math, plus non-core classes or what you might think of as electives. So here we see Spanish, one of the world languages, PE, and then graphic design, an elective. And in the 4x4 block schedule, that same student would have all 7 of those same courses, but because they now have an additional slot, that allows them to also fit in an art course in addition to the graphic design course. And so in summary, there were 3 key areas of focus for Newport Public Schools that drove some of the thinking behind the changes to the high school vision and the high school schedule. And so just to reiterate those are academic achievement, and you can see some examples of initiatives to drive that forward. Educational equity, some of which has already been discussed with respect to changes at Thompson, and also comes into play with AP classes at the high school. And student ownership, which is really at the heart of the vision that you saw here for the Rogers High School. And so with that, shall I hand it over to Principal Vance?
He's right behind you. You may want to stay over there.
Is he gonna show us? Is he gonna show us? We don't have.
So some of the things I'm going to talk about kind of stole my thunder with a little bit, but that's okay. So we've been looking at change the schedule since the beginning of last year. There were concerns with the schedule last year with the flat 7. Going into this year, we've been providing 7 periods every day, but there's a little rotation in the morning and a little rotation in the afternoon to kind of break up the redundancy for kids. Sometimes kids have a hard time coming in the morning, so if we stayed with that flat schedule, they always miss the same class. And by the end of the day, kids meet a threshold, and they may be, at their point of frustration in that last period of the day, and they're not necessarily engaging, so that impacts that last period. So we built in that rotation. It's been a little bit of a struggle to get that into place. So we continued to look at a new schedule for next year, and that's where we came to the 4x4 block. So just to kind of make the comparison realistically, so we are proposing 82-minute periods versus 46-minute periods. They were shortened from the year before because we built in the crew period, our advisory period, which shaved minutes off each period. Instead of running a flat schedule or a schedule the same every day or the same classes every day, we're going to go to that AB that alternates between one day and the next. We have built in some ideas around an academic support period, and then we've also built in more time for crew or our advisory. So presently this year, our advisory in a 6-day cycle, because we have a 6-day rotation, it meets 84 minutes. While if we build in the 25 minutes every day for crew, it gives us 150, and then it gives us also an opportunity to do more things than just build the relationships. We can do some academic support, give some guidance around decisions for college and career. So it gives us a little more flexibility with that time, but still do not shave off so much time that it impacts the classroom environments. So again, this block, it meets the needs of all of our NACTech programs, but on top of it also meets the needs of our county kids that come in half-time. Because the days are not going to rotate, so kids that need to come in the morning will still get the same amount of time and the same periods of time than they would in this present schedule, so they can always access those CTE programs or our NACTech. It also will allow for internships, job placements, and college courses off campus. One of the concerns that came up with the 7-period schedule was our AP courses and feeling that they really were trying to jam content into a smaller period of time. So with the 82 minutes, it gives them a longer period of time to instruct and really get into the content and the concepts more rigorously. The added time also adds for lab activities, as you talked about, the breakdown and setup, but also our art classes and any sort of research, exploratory learning that's happening gives them more opportunity to do those things. On top of it, it also allows our kids to be a part of our CTE programs, but still access AP courses. So they don't have to make a decision one way or the other. They can experience both, and then once they graduate, make that decision. It does allow for intervention as well, but it also allows for some of our kids that want to get through high school a little bit further, quicker, and move on to secondary education or into career, an opportunity to accelerate through high school. So this is the base structure of what we're going to be running with. It's the 4x4 block AB, and it outlines how it is and the minutes per period. But what I wanted to do is show you examples of student schedules, so what it would really look like for our kids in different avenues in our building. So this would be a typical CTE NACTech program. I did it as culinary, and so they meet at the same time every day, 82 minutes, so it meets that requirement. But then they're also built into the crew period, so they're getting that exposure as well in culinary. But then also being able to access all of our typical classes, plus an academic support period if needed. So now, on top of that, we have courses like Cosmo that potentially need a little extra time in the clinic or working with clients. So similar to culinary, it has the same blocks aligned, but that academic support period could also be at additional time in the clinic, gaining hours, working with clients. With the potential of EB coming in and the idea of internships, we have the ability to run all of our core academic classes plus phys ed on the A day, and then have a student off the campus on an internship placement for the entire day if needed, or we could even break that down by half day if needed. And so this is a traditional schedule, so it's all of our academic courses, plus Spanish, computers, and then an academic support period. And then to our accelerated students, the ones I was talking about trying to get through the high school a little quicker, they're able to use that academic support period to pick up another class, an AP course, but they're meeting all of the requirements. So that's it for some of those examples.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Leary.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Both up there. Do you, I've been a teacher for 38 years, so this is not new to me, I'm a math teacher, okay? So I'm 100% against 4x4 block schedule. Do you ever compare other districts? Like right now, they're taking the test we just had, I know it's only up to 8th grade, and they looked at it. What areas did much better right next to us? Massachusetts, okay, they were 20 points higher in every level. So today, I call Brockton up. Today, I call Fall River up. Today, I call New Bedford up. All with similar population, okay, with 70% more free reduced lunch in that area. One of them only tried it, they got away from it. We also tried it in Newport. We had this how many years back? Somebody in the audience help me out? How many years back we have this? Yeah, and give me a year. I got all the test results from around a month a year. Every year they do a punch result. I have every one of them, I can tell you where you ranked. You know, here's why it doesn't work. How many kids do you think are absent of party in Newport today? In Rogers? 127. We have over 50,000 incidents every year of absence of tardy. So if I'm in my math class on day one, and that kid is there, okay, he's learned that lesson for 84 minutes. Day two comes, okay, he's absent. I mean, day two, he's not there. Day three comes, he's absent. Okay, so now he's missed that class. Now day 5 comes, which has been his second, third time in that rotation. He's late. He misses the class. He comes back not to Tuesday. So he's been in class one day out of the whole time. Every day works with our population. They got to see the math teacher every day. They got to see the English teacher every day. They can't be missing this when you've got 50,000 incidents of absence and tardy. 127. That's what I'm doing on my phone, with everything using my phone. 127 today. This is absolutely crazy. It does not work. If you're trying to reinvent the world, go to Brockton, go to Forever, go to places that have the same thing we have. They won't do it. Brockton tried it. I'm sorry, New Bedford tried it. They got away from it as fast as they could. They said after a couple of years. It's the worst thing. And guess what? I will prove you your results haven't gotten any better. Right here. Anybody else can look up Brown Monthly. Every September they put it out. They rank the high schools. Okay? It's a huge mistake. And I would strongly suggest to my committee members, and being a teacher, knowing that, do not do that with our population. Do not do that. And I won't tie up everything else up, but go ahead. Anybody else, Mr. Gomes, have else questions?
Any other, Mrs. Boland?
Yeah, I have a question. So in the past, when we implemented this, one of the major problems was that, the professional development about how to use an 80-minute period versus a 48-minute period. So what the issue was, of course, a big part of it was pacing guides. How many pacing guides exist right now in all of the subjects over at Rogers, and especially the core subjects? It's my understanding that there maybe not any of them. So is that something, that would have to be in place before this was implemented so that teachers, were able to pace differently and get through because you're still responsible for the same material.
So the pacing guide information I don't have in front of me. Had I known that was going to come up, I would have brought something to respond to that. We are looking at our curriculum with Kim Bean and going through, we just did years at a glance. We're going to start building out units. So that work is happening. And you're right, being that the times are longer in alternating days, that pace needs to be adjusted a little bit. What our real focus has been is around, by department, looking at different things, like science is looking at rubrics, ELA is looking at different standards, but then we're also looking at that instruction and how do we deliver lessons in an extended period of time? How do we keep kids roped in and engaged? So hopefully, with the shift to that more student-centered learning, project-based idea, our kids will be more engaged and the propensity for attendance issues will drop. But we have to kind of venture down that road with a little more support.
Okay, I have one other question. I would think with this schedule then, if you had a student who needed supports in math, couldn't they eventually take that math class as a double block, like every single day? No, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
so if you had an ESL student who needed something, support in an area, that we could actually, get them twice the help, because not all kids need 8 classes. There's some kids that's going to be a challenge for, to have 8 different subjects and keep that organized.
Yeah, correct. You're right. And so that's one of the discussion points is that academic support block of time. So kids that need intervention, whether it's reading, it's math, special ed, some of our L students, we'd be able to build that into their schedule without having to take away electives. Presently, if they are scheduled into one of those intervention times, they lose a class. So this gives us the opportunity to build that back in. It also gives us an opportunity, because we do have kids that need to repeat, where they can make up they can make up content areas in the same time. So if a student failed English 9, they go into their sophomore year, they can double up, take English 9 and 10, and try and recoup both credits and not put their graduation date in jeopardy. So we've been really kind of thoughtful around what that looks like, having that added block in there. But we could, if a student needed to be, getting math on a daily basis, that's something that we could build in through that one block.
Right. Mrs. Neary had a couple of questions, and I'll go to you.
Hi,
Louisa.
Principal Vance. It's just, I have a question that actually is prior to any of this, and maybe other people know. Have we tried, or has Rogers tried, and it's based on what you said, have we tried a rotating schedule of 7 periods before in the school?
So with our county students that come in half-time, we can't do a full day rotation.
I'm sorry. I asked, have we tried it?
Not from my experience, but kind of knowing the restrictions of what we need in our program. We've done a little bit of rotation this year with a morning rotation and an afternoon rotation,
Okay.
but not a full day, 7-day period rotation. We have kids that come in from, Portsmouth, Middletown, Tiverton that need to leave in the middle of the day, or we have kids come in middle of the day to access our afternoon. And so if we rotated the entire day, it would throw their schedule off.
Okay. How many of those students do we have who come in?
Hi, I'm Robert Young, I'm the director of the Career and Tech Center. So right now we have 25 students that are part-time, but with the rotating schedule, what it does, we also have P-Tech, which is our program. Our students are going to CCRI every day, or Monday through Thursday. So they're taking classes at CCRI. They leave Rogers at 7:30, 7:35, and they come back at about 10 o'clock. And that's consistent every day. So if they did rotate, then they would be missed, and they have that time blocked out of their schedule, so that's their schedule for that day. So if the rotating schedule happened, then they would be missing class because of the rotation during that time.
Okay, all right. How many of those students are there compared to how many students do we have who are not part-time students? So how many part-time students do we have?
25 part-time students.
25 part-time students,
Correct.
and we have 600 students at
Yep.
Rogers
Yeah.
overall. I'm just trying to get a sense, because you also mentioned the first, on 2 slides back, I think the first thing that's on there is it meets the needs of the students of LATEC programs, which is great. I mean, we have fantastic programs and we should grow them. I'm just trying to think about proportionality. So we're talking about 25 students and we're changing an entire, it looks like from this slide that we're changing an entire schedule based on their needs. So maybe I'm not understanding something and I'm happy to be educated.
So
I mean, really.
Sorry, so the part-time kids are a small piece of it. You know, our NACTEC and our CTE programs, they need large chunks of time
Right.
pretty consistently. So like chef, he needs kids around lunchtime to be in that kitchen regularly, so they can't go in and out. And so when we're talking about meeting the needs of our programs, we're not just talking about our halftime kids, it's our kids that are in our CTE programs full-time, because they need those tracks of time every day to meet and get into the kitchen, get into Cosmo, to do carpentry. Particularly like carpentry, if they go off-site to do some work, a shorter block of time doesn't allow them to go and
Right.
actually do work and come back to school.
So, bear with me.
Yep.
Rotating schedule, and instead of that schedule being 48 minutes, what if it was a longer block of time? So it's kind of combining what the 4x4 block is, which is longer blocks of time, and combining with what we currently have, which is the 7-day schedule, which we're saying, well, the 7 schedule, it's not great, but so we rotate that one, but we also make it longer. So instead of 48 minutes, 75 minutes. Is that something that's possible? Have we at least looked at those options? Bear with me, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions.
So we have, and so if
Okay.
we went to a 6-period day, our kids would lose opportunities,
I said 7.
right? So that would, less periods, longer times. So instead of
Right.
4, it's 6. And so if we do that, kids lose the opportunity of being on both tracks all the way through.
Okay.
So at some point early in their high school career, they would have to make a decision, okay, am I CTE
Okay.
or am I career and college ready? Because it's around taking Spanish, those language courses, and so we would limit their opportunities by reducing that.
So the 4x4 block would allow, which it shows, would allow with that 8th period, it allows them an additional elective possibly.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Boatright.
Yeah, I think the longer classes for project-based learning is a definite for CTE, is a definite for labs, is a definite. I know Newport Projects uses a double block, but there are times that I would think that it's, there would need to be a change to many classes that are more standard, I'm going to say, that don't use any of those models that, and I guess the question is, I think that is the plan to try to make all classes more project-based and experimental learning, or are we trying to, what's your plan there?
So we're looking to shift it toward, that experiential learning, more student-centered, so there's more choice, voice, and agency in how lessons are delivered. With a block, you can teach any content area in a block schedule and do it well. It's really about shifts in activity, right? So you can't just lecture and impart knowledge. You have to break it up, 15-minute chunks with either going from whole group to small group to individual work back together for a debrief at the end. But there's a model of instruction that fits into that period of time that we can blend into every content area in the building.
Is it? Any other questions? Anybody else? Dr. Flowers?
I just want to make a comment. It's been coming up periodically, comparing Rhode Island scores and non-concerned courses, Newport, with our neighboring state of Massachusetts. And Mrs. Sylvia and I were at, and Mrs. Gaines was there with us too yesterday at a conference up at Rhode Island College with our kids count, and we're reminded, I've gone to a number of these, where we're reminded that the Massachusetts success story started 20 years ago. And we're just really jumping into a lot of this right now. And again, when you talk to a number of people, they say, it's not easy, it's not, everything is perfect, and we're not expecting it. So I just think that is one point that really has to be brought home all along. But the question, I was just wondering, your day A and day B, so it would be like, the first, say, whole week, it would be A, B, A, B, A, and then what, the next day would be B?
Correct,
Much like your day 6
correct.
does, which, I always forget which day it is when I go down to the high school. Oh, sorry, yesterday was day 6. And the funny thing is that what's old is new. Way back in the Jurassic, when I was in what they call junior high school double sessions, we had a 6-day thing. So it's something like this is probably just updating things that have been worked out. As someone who taught for a number of years, I would think that the shorter blocks of time for some real heavy-duty content area, reading and writing in the content area and discussing and working in groups and individually, that 40, what, was it 48?
46.
It's not terribly long when you really get into the meat of things. So, but that's just my first response to that. Obviously, I'd have to look at it in more detail. Thank you.
I just have go ahead, Mrs. Sylvia.
I just wanted to add on to Dr. Flowers' comments that at the seminar yesterday at Rhode Island College, it was very clearly stated that 20 years ago when Massachusetts started the test, their scores were not much different than what we saw in Rhode Island this year. So.
Mrs. Neary.
One more question. I think it's one more question. The double blocks, if they happen, those double blocks for extra instruction, so that would be 80 times 2, right?
Correct.
So I think I'm going to echo Mrs. Boland's question about how are we training, or what is the plan to train teachers? Because 160 minutes of instructional time, even if I understand it's not all lecturing, that's a real shift. So I'm just wondering, what is the plan for training instructors and teachers, for those instructors and teachers who will be doing those double blocks?
So when we're talking about double blocking for kids that need intervention or support, they're not just getting 2 periods of the same information. So it's not, they're gonna go in for their 82-minute block of time in math class.
Right.
And then we have Granier Phelps, who was hired as an interventionist last year. She would be having a group of kids in that second block of math doing targeted instruction around math concepts. So it's not the same. So we're not having a teacher teach for 164 minutes. They're doing 82-minute lesson in math. That's one teacher. And then those kids are getting another model of intervention for math with a different teacher.
And then the others who do not need the intervention would be going on to something else.
Correct.
So I have just a couple of questions. I'm sure Mrs. Neary may come up with some more, but what is the implementation planning timeline for this? I mean, what is the expectation? What would DM Group say? I mean, do you need 6 months to implement this, a year to plan? Along with that, to piggyback on Ida's question, was the PD, obviously if you switch in September, when is the PD taking place? As you said, that the teachers need additional PD and how to teach for those 82 minutes. Is that expected that you do that for a year and you implement the schedule a year down the road, or how does that all play in together?
So we're looking at September to kick the schedule off, and we're presently in that mode of providing professional development to our teachers to be able to teach in a block and look at our instruction differently. So that's happening already. That started in the beginning of the school year, September.
So I guess for DM Group, Sam, if you didn't mind, what is a typical implementation time the DM Group sees or recommends for changes like this?
Yeah, we'll work with districts typically during the course of a school year, and I would say some of the time they're looking at, if we're talking about it this year, we want to start in the fall, and other cases they'll be saying, we're talking about it this year so that next year can be a planning and a learning year, and then can start the following fall. And we've worked with districts in both of those situations. I think it's important to make sure, regardless of the timeline, that you're being thoughtful about gathering input from teachers to understand their concerns and hesitations about the change, giving time to address those things, make sure that they're being addressed through professional development. And I don't think there's a single magic timeline, but it's about doing the right things and making time to do the right things.
And who makes those recommendations? Is that something you'll come back and say you think that we're in a place that we can start this in September, or that we need another year of planning? Where does that recommendation come from? Or where does that thought come from?
Usually that's been something driven by the superintendent, the principal, and other leaders in the district. I think we've sometimes been engaged to advise on the timeline. In this case, we've focused more on some of the research behind schedules and the cost analysis of the schedule. Those have been the main areas of our support.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have. Okay.
I've got
Mrs.
one more,
Neary.
of course. I would be interested in seeing, for the schools that you've worked with in the past, I'd be interested in seeing implementation timelines, if there's something that you can give us over the past however many years you've been doing this work. I'd like to see implementation timelines and see if what we are, or what Principal Vance is envisioning, is something that's realistic, doable. Forgive me, I have a little bit of trepidation in putting something in place in September when we are in December, because I work at a university and we do this a lot, and there's usually a much longer ramping up period, so I'm a little nervous. So I'd just like to see what other schools have done before. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a recent example that comes to mind. I can provide that to members of the administration to share back here.
Could you possibly do a couple? I mean, one or two, maybe three, would be great if you had similarities.
Yeah, I'll have to look. I think we often are taking some similar plans and just adapting them to the calendar year, so I'm not sure, but I'll see what we can find.
Dr. Flowers?
In addition to that, would you be able to let us know how the public was informed? And any kind of concerns that parents and the older students themselves might have? So this is not something that we would just put out, because just from experience, we have to be as transparent as possible about what's going on.
Yeah, we haven't generally played a major role in public engagement, more so with teachers. So we've already talked with the administration here about some of the steps that can be useful for informing teachers, for gathering their concerns, for making sure that professional development addresses them. I'm not sure we'd have a lot of specific expertise on public engagement on this front.
It'd be interesting to see what some of the other school systems that have done this, how they informed, and just get the information out.
Yeah.
Community outreach.
I'm going to go to, Mrs. Boland has a question down this end. I'll come right back to you in a minute.
I just wanted to say, Mrs. Neary, this is a miracle. This is coming to us before Christmas, and we're talking about implementing in September. This is incredibly, far ahead of the game, so I think if we keep on this path, I know that the staff is not happy with the schedule we have this year. It's not worked logistically, am I correct? Very well, no, it hasn't, right?
We've had some road bumps.
Yeah, so I think that if we continue on this path, and we got plenty of time to work it all out and work with the teachers, so thank you very much for doing this as early as it's happening.
Mr. Leary?
Yeah, I was going to follow up on two things, and Mr. Neary, one of them. When you do those 2 schools or 3 schools you're going to give us, make sure the population is similar, okay? Let's say you did in Barrington. Don't bring us that. That'd be a waste of time, okay? Bring us something that's similar with, 65, 70% free reduced lunch, so we can look at what they've done with it, with that. And the second thing is really struck me. Maybe I got this wrong. Did somebody say we only have 20, you said 25 part-time students at the Protect Center? So we base our schedule, we rotated the schedule for years in math. It was the best thing in the whole world. Period 1 was day 1, day 2 was period 2, starting off, day 3 was period 3. So you had the kids at all different times of day. It was the best damn thing in the whole world, because the kid was tired in the morning, you got him his last period another day. So it was like, so if I'm hearing this right, for 25 kids that
We're not basing it off of the 25 students. We're basing it off of the fact that the Career and Tech Center, they need 2 consecutive, in a 7-period, 48-minute day, they need 2 consecutive periods. So if they have carpentry periods 5 and 6, if 5 is the last period of the day and 6 is the first period of the next day, then that prohibits them from doing what they would normally do in carpentry or culinary or a cosmetology program. They can't come in there, they can't come into culinary, get ready, get suited up, start to cook, and then leave go to phys ed and then, come back for culinary. It doesn't, that's not what works. The 25 part-time students, it's something that we do have, but we're not basing our schedule off of those 25 students. We are not doing that.
Some of the best ways to go, I don't know, Jared, if you want to go up there, just show, you have to keep 2 of those blocks together at all times for whether they're part-time or full-time CTE students. You have to keep them together. And it doesn't make any difference if it's part-time or full-time. I think the other thing that people are not bringing up, this schedule also affords our career and tech students or our students who are in AP courses to take career and tech. Where before, they used to have to make a choice. I'm going to be an AP kid or I'm going to take a CTE program. Now they can do both. And the other thing they can do is, as Mr. Vance brought up and Mr. Young, is we can now allow them to go to CCRI and have a regular schedule and not have to worry about that. So there are many benefits to it. I understand and hear you clearly, Mr. Leary, about the concern about attendance and about when a child misses schools. And that, to me, is another and separate area where we need to try to address. I don't know, let me put it this way, as people have been talking, I don't know if having a certain kind of schedule is going to guarantee that those children that miss so much school are going to be successful regardless. So that's the one thing.
I would agree with that. My only concern would be that a 5-day schedule, I'm going to see that kid 5 days in math. If he's absent 1 and 2, I'm going to get him. If he's absent 1 and 2 in his block schedule, you're out for a whole time. And let's be honest, I taught school when I said, I doubt there's many teachers, and I don't mean this in any rude way, no matter how you say it, is going to teach for 85 minutes. And I know Mrs. Bones had kids in the class, and I've had 6 kids go through the public schools there in Newport. I'm coming here, sending my kids to private school. They've all graduated from Rogers. And when they get out there to tell you things you don't want to know, you want to know then, but don't want to know now, that they're not going to give you that. They're going to go in there and say, okay, we teach for a half hour, now do your homework, or now give me any questions. So it's not going to work. It doesn't work in towns that have tried it. It's not going to work with our population.
So I'm not Dr. Bean, but I'm going to pretend I'm Dr. Bean tonight because she'd be poking me right now. So the work that's been going on for the past year and a half at Rogers High School with Mr. Vance and Mr. Young and Mr. Monahan and everyone, they've been working with the Barr Foundation, the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, through their generosity. We've had a 2-year professional development opportunity for our students and for our teachers and for our parents to actually go visit other schools with similar demographics. The teachers were really clear they wanted to do that. So they went and visited the schools, and then they looked at schedules and they looked at the type of instruction that was going on in the school. And the Ted Sizer group that's with them, and the high school teachers more than me can speak to, the professional development they're getting as far as that personalized learning. And to Mr. Vance's point, education and teaching and learning, it's not about sitting and absorbing information. It's about hands-on learning, it's about group learning, it's about discussion. It's very different in the sense of that we're learning the more active, meaning literally interactive we are with the instruction, the more we're going to hold on to. And that kind of training and those kind of discussions are what is presently going on with the schools, is my understanding. And then the other thing, I just want to remind everyone that has been here, and for the people that are new to the committee, this has been a 2-year process as far as looking at schedule, quality of instruction, course offerings, etc. So Dr. Bean, through me, is now channeling off.
Any other questions?
Just one.
Mrs. Boatright.
You're saying that, like, period 1 and 2 have to stay in the morning, but you could flip those, is that true? And then 3 and 4 could be flipped. They could be rotated in the morning and afternoon, the 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and things like that. Yeah. So that might help some tardy people, possibly. Possibly.
So that's going to impact different programs differently if we do that flip-flop.
So
So it's
it might not be able to.
necessarily.
No, okay, that's good.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Moving on, the next order of business gets us into action items. First item is 6.1, request for approval of Newport School Committee regular calendar for 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I missed the so moved. Was that?
Me.
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Boland. I heard it but didn't see where. Motion made by Mrs. Boland, seconded by Mrs. Sylvia. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item is 6.2, to request for approval of policy 1545, the order of business at a regular school meeting for the second reading.
I'd like to
Mrs.
make it,
Boland?
yes, I think there was a little bit of confusion. I made the change to this policy last meeting, but as I said, there was some confusion. So the way it's written right now, public comment would come after the action items. It was the intent last week that public comment come directly after student achievement and so we want it to be number 4. So my motion is that we move public comment to number 4 and move action items to number 5.
I thought we resolved that. This is
No,
what
we
we
didn't
wanted.
resolve.
So the amendment would be to this, that we would move, number 5 would be, number 4 would be public comment, number 5 would be action items. Mrs. Boland's amendment, is there a second on that amendment? Seconded by Mrs. Neary. Any discussion?
Does make more sense.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The amendment, we're voting on the amendment.
For the amendment,
The amendment, yes, I'm sorry.
amending the policy to flip public comment and action items from 4.0 to 5.0. So, seeing no comment, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, there'd be a motion in order to approve the policy as amended.
I move that the policy as amended, number 1545, be approved.
Motion made by Mrs. Sylvia for it to be approved as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Boland, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 6.3, request for approval of policy 4612, interview process and procedures for selection of school principals and above, on the second reading. Is
So
there-
moved.
Second?
Motion's been made to approve, Mrs. Boland, seconded by Mrs. Sylvia. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Neary.
I would like to see that we have a call for parents or a request for parents to be part of the interview process instead of just having a list of parents to be part of the interview process. And/or if we have a list of parents that can be called for in the interview process, that these parents would be rotated off every couple months, so it's not always the same parents being called upon.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Flowers.
just a clarification, this is, for interviewing process and procedures for principals or above. It's, one of the, probably the more difficult part is to get people who will, in essence, volunteer to be on the committee, or the interview committee. And sometimes people might say, this month, sure, put my name on, and then this doesn't happen until 5 months down the road. And so if we have enough of a bank of people on that list, so we have a list, but as you say, keep trying to draft people into that. And reminding everyone, these are the second readings, and once it's voted upon here, it becomes policy.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I think this is
Leary.
a good point by Mrs. Neary. Why don't we pull this one to next month and discuss that one again, second reading, look at it a little further. And I'd like to study what exactly is in there for, school committee have any point in this one at all? Mrs. Bowen, you know that? Anybody know that?
say that? I didn't
So it's
understand.
just, the process for selecting principals?
And above, yeah.
above.
It's pretty much the same policy that we've had, I'm going down to the end here.
Well,
Oh,
the
gee.
issue that was added to it
2012.
was to have an increase of, to add a parent in the language that was there. Prior, you could see that the interview committee was composed of a teacher, a principal, a community representative, a parent, or guardian. And we put the language in there to be at least one parent or guardian, because a lot of times, not being able to get people, those people would double up. In other words, you would have a community representative that also
Who's
sat
also
in as a
parent,
parent.
yeah,
So
they
this
two
made it
hats,
so that
yeah.
the committee had to have a certain number of each, and that's why it was amended.
Okay.
I think we could certainly add an amendment into it, to Mrs. Neary's point that we solicit.
This was amended in November of 2012, and then again in 2013. So I think you might be familiar with this when you were on
I
before.
do like the idea of near developing a full list of people that be able to call. It's very good.
So rather than, I would say that I don't believe it's a pressing issue at the moment, but I think we could pull it to properly see how to insert Mrs. Neary's comments into it, because studying it quickly, I don't see how we can
Right.
add the sentence. It could go back to, it could go back to the policy committee and come back out. So if that's the wish, we could pull it for further discussion at this
I'll
point.
make a motion to pull 6.3.
Mr. Leary has made a motion to remove 6.3,
Second.
policy number 4612, for further discussion. Seconded by Mrs. Boland. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved to remove that. Next item up is 6.4, request for approval of policy 4650, appointments and promotions. This is again on the second reading. This is,
Mr.
This
Chairman, I think
reflects
this
back
also
on, yeah. Pardon me?
should be pulled, referred back, because
Because it goes back to the
it
other one.
refers to policy 4612 on the selection.
okay, very good. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Mr. Leary, seconded by Mrs. Boland. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next motion on, Dr. Flowers.
I'd like to remind the committee, and especially our new people who are on, that when anything from policy, well, any of these items that are on board docs, when we get it, please read, because it's all put in red and underlined and with side notes, any of the recommendations. And if you have any questions about these policy changes or amendments or additions or whatever, please let me know. And this goes even the part that the public can look at. I think I say this every time we have a policy presented. Please read it, send messages to me so I can have it and it can be addressed right here. And also, any board members, committee members certainly may attend the policy meeting. So, and if anyone has any other recommendations for new policies, amendments, whatever, please let me know, and we will be putting a meeting together, probably after early in the new year, we'll put it that way.
Very good.
Okay.
Next action item is number 6.5, request for approval to add gymnastics to the Rogers High School athletics offerings. Is there a motion on this item?
So moved.
Motion's been made
Second.
by Mrs. Boland, seconded by Mrs. Sylvia. Any discussion? Mr. Leary?
Mr. Chairman, can we have Mr. Coley come
We
up?
sure
and give
can.
us
He's
a-
here. Why not?
Good evening.
Oh,
You have the question.
No, the question. Any explanation to it, or you want to explain like there's
Oh,
no
there
cause?
was a
in
memo,
it?
and that not,
It's right in your letter.
The memo's included.
So,
So there's...
The memo's there, it explains how Mr. Cawley has been very creative, and he has the financing, and it was something that fortunately, he was able to get together, and we have students that are interested and would like to move it forward, as the memo states.
So what about next year?
Next year will be, we'll see how this year goes first. And that was put forth to the parents and families and the kids as well. I will say there's 20 signed up, 75, 80% of them are 9th and 10th graders. So they'll be, assuming this year goes well, they'll be interested in it for next year. So we're keeping tabs on how things go.
And there's no cost at all this year?
This year, no.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to clarify that. You believe you can absorb the cost. There is a cost to it, but you
Correct,
believe you
correct.
can
That'd be a
absorb
better
the
way of
cost
saying
in your current
absorb it.
budget.
Absorb it or fundraise.
Correct. Okay.
And I want to share, he was very successful in implementing lacrosse for us.
Right. And that was good.
So, any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 6.6. It's a request for approval of Cox Communications Access Agreement. This is an agreement between Cox and the school department that allows Cox employees who provide us with telephone and internet service to come onto the grounds and to have access for location for service calls, upgrades, et cetera. Is there
Mr. Chairman, I move that this be approved.
motion made to approve, seconded by
Second.
Dr. Flowers? Any discussion? Mrs. Boland?
Just one real quick question. I didn't ask enough questions when we did the cell phone tower, so this isn't any increased devices or anything, it's totally,
No, this has usually been a standard operating procedure with administration, but we wanted to make sure we brought everything in front of the committee.
okay, just making sure no more equipment.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 6.8, request for approval, 6.7, request for approval of the English language learning curriculum resource for Rogers High School, and I believe Dr. Mooney will.
Well, first, I'm making a motion that we approve the request.
Okay, motion made to approve and motion made by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Dr. Mooney, if you'd like to say a few words, please do.
Oh, sure. Hi, how are you, everyone? I'm Riley Lee Mooney, I'm the Director of English Learners, and I'm presenting the new curriculum to you through National Geographic. It's a research-based curriculum for English learners, and it will start at the high school, and pending funding, we will be moving it to the middle school as well. Continuum, it's through National Geographic as well, and it's based on proficiency levels, and I mapped out the proficiencies for you so that you can see the tiers the students will be placed in, if approved.
Any questions for Dr. Mooney?
Is this in our budget? Would you know that?
Mr. Leary?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, should ask you. Is, I don't know if the business manager, is this in our budget or no?
The funds will be used through the Rhode Island State categorical funding. And then consumables from the year after will be through my Title III budget.
So is that like a grant?
Yes.
So what happened, is there a sunset on a grant?
No. No.
No sunset.
No.
Thank you.
Mrs. Neary?
I thought the curriculum looked really good. What about Pell?
So Pell is right, yes, of course, close to my heart as well. Right now, they're working with an extension of Wonders, so there is a compatibility for English learners with that. So I would like to test this through the middle school and the high school, but there is a continuum for elementary level that I'm really looking into as well. Thank you.
Mrs. Boland?
I just have one question. Are we making sure that all the curriculum is going through the curriculum committee, or?
Yes, last month I presented and it was approved to the curriculum committee.
Any other questions? Dr. Flowers?
No,
Okay.
I just found the answer that was
Yes, okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 6.8. It's a request for approval of the visual arts pathway. I believe Mrs. Sheen and Mr. Young are going to say a few words. Is there a motion? We can move into discussion. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that the request be approved.
Motion made by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Mr. Young or Mrs. Sheen, if you'd like to say a few words.
So this has gone before the curriculum committee already. It is a RIDE-approved program. And so, there are a lot of classes taught at Rogers that could become a program or a pathway, and, the arts is one of them. So in conversation with Ms. Sheehan, we talked about whether or not we wanted to pursue this, and she was extremely excited about the opportunity for students who want to continue to kind of pursue the arts in a more of a career-oriented pathway. So we worked together since last spring over the summer and kind of putting this packet together and just going through the proper procedures to make this an opportunity at the high school.
And I just want to say one thing is that this was presented as a new initiative at our Rhode Island Art Educators Association, and that there was a rollout as far as just the excitement of being able to look at a career pathway in the arts and the rigor that it involves. And one thing that to make note of is that we want to be ahead of the curve instead of falling underneath it. And by us implementing and having this pathway, we will be able to capture as many different schools as we can to have this very rigorous curriculum that goes in. So that's really exciting because I want to be on the A team, the art team, and I think that would be the best way to do it. And once we have it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Young, then other existing schools that are within our unit would feed into this program.
Could they feed in as soon as next year then?
So pending approval tonight, we would, the next steps, actually starting next week, the RIDE approval process begins. And so we would apply for RIDE approval, and because get some feedback. So because our programs, we're NEASC accredited and we have applied for program approval in the past, we know how to get everything done in the right way. So I'm optimistic that pending approval tonight, we would get RIDE approval, and then we would be able to accept students as early as September, yes.
Mr. Leary, I'll go down to you first and come back this way.
A couple questions. The reason I asked you to explain these things, I know we have them, but the people in the audience or people watching this on TV have no clue. So if you could give a 30-second to a minute what visual arts pathway is, and then is there a cost for this? Is it a new position? What is it? Explain that too. That's for me. Second part. I know it's a lot of work, but people read this and they say, what are they voting on? What's, they don't know what it is,
Well, the course itself is, what it is that I do have some paperwork that I can email to all of you and present as far as what there is. And what it is that there, within the state, there are certain courses that create the pathway. And what it deals with is AP art classes, which we have none of right now, and would be able to take you to the next level so that you are career ready to go into the number of careers that there are in the arts. And there are, I can provide for you over 300 different careers that there are in the arts. So the program would be an in-depth for a student who is seriously going into a profession, let's say, for example, as an architect or a painter or art education, all right, a ceramist, and everything from that to, there's so many listed, whether it's even just interior design and moving in those ways. So the overall thing is to be able to capture the vocation of a student who really wants to go in the arts. It's not as an elective, it's their way of life. That is their vocation pathway.
So the second part of that question, is there staff needed for additional staff or additional cost?
So we have to look at, and I'm not asking for any additional staff, but we were hoping to have just a lateral transfer. Someone from the high school already would be teaching this coursework.
Yeah, the reason I've asked all these questions, it's always about the money with me, everybody knows that. But you can shake your head out there, people, that's fine. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you have a serious deficit coming up this year. You better be prepared for it, you got to make some serious choices. It's really there, it's not something that, so, I'm not against this, but if you're telling me you're hiring a teacher and we gotta do some cutting, why would I waste your time?
Right.
You know? Thank you.
Mrs. Boatright.
Yeah, I love the arts, and I think everybody needs to take them because I think creativity is the basis for every field. The question I have is just, we are a smaller school, Rogers High School and the Career Tech Center, and so this is really probably even more for Mr. Young, but, we have almost 700 kids in the school system, and we already have several pathways, so we have to be able to sustain full classes for each of those, and I want to know, can we get information on each pathway with with enrollment per level, because this would be a 4-year pathway, correct? So, can we get that information from you? Do you have that handy?
I don't have it on me right now. I can get it to you, tomorrow, but I do keep track of the numbers. I did send the numbers per grade up today. Somebody had asked for those numbers, but I agree with you. We're a small school. We don't need to have 20-plus programs, but this is just another avenue for some of the students who are interested in the arts
Right.
to go in that field. Yeah.
Because I do believe even within Rogers, we can have career pathways. I mean, if this is a CTE or a Rogers or whatever, I'm not sure. This would be an official CTE program, correct? So.
CTE program, but we're all together.
Uh-huh. So, open to other districts and so on, right? Do we have
Yes.
minimum numbers that you need to sustain a program?
Yeah, so we have to get into the program of studies and post it and let
And-
people know it. But yeah,
I'm talking enrollment. Minimum number of students enrolling in it. Do you have that? Do we have a minimum number we
I
set,
don't know
or?
what the district's minimum number is.
With the district?
But we would follow the district policy, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Flowers.
Thank you. Actually, Mrs. Sheehan did emphasize what I wanted to stress, that the C in the CTE is career. This is not just jobs. And on the proposal, there are a number of careers that are listed with some of the proposed salaries that they would be going into. And I'd say, wow, I wish they were doing this back in my day. That we tend to provide training, if you will, for a number of other areas, and it's so good to see the arts getting the attention that the arts deserve, and the visual arts in this particular case. I think this is to me, it's refreshing. I think this is something we should go for. When I first got on this committee 10 years ago, and the complaint was, career in tech is dying out. There's not much going on, and then all of a sudden, it's really beginning to just blossom. And this is a perfect example. Last year, when I met with the young lady whom I mentor, and she's graduating this year, by the way, but we met during her art class, and the talent, just in that block of time that I was in there, the talent that some of these young people have. And when you see, when they have the art shows and everything's displayed, say down at the post office too, and people are just going, wow. We have so much talent here. Let's give these young people the opportunity to take that talent and that passion and get it into a career, just as they do with all the other opportunities at Career in Tech. So this I feel I'm so glad to see this happening, and I hope we can get moving towards that. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Neary.
This is really impressive. And to piggyback on the conversation we had a few items ago on schedules, so a block schedule would actually be beneficial for a pathway like that, wouldn't it? That seems to be my understanding. If you had the 4x4 block, with that 8th block that would allow students to do a pathway like that. Because everything nests together, so.
Right. And
Right.
one thing is, no matter what you're working on, especially the creative process, that when you're working on something and you have a longer block of time, then you can create to get to the point of completion. So if you're working in fashion design, for example, and you're working on pattern making and then designing, to be able to use a larger block is just so beneficial to what you're doing, whether you're painting or drawing. And students say it all the time. This is the shortest class I have in my schedule. And no, it's the same amount of time, except that we're using the right side of the brain. And we're using the side of the brain that has the creative, the mental side. When I taught high school, the one thing is that when I taught a jewelry class, and I would say to students, bring in your social studies notebook. And they go, what do you mean, bring in my social studies notebook? And there, when they would open up their social studies notebook, were all little doodles and designs down the side of the notebook. And I said, this is where we're going to start designing. But don't tell your social studies teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is 6.9. I believe there is a request to pull this from the agenda tonight. So we need we'll withdraw that. Item 6.10 is a request for approval of bid 1906. It's for graphing calculators, Mr. Vance, through the high school. And as the information says, this will be funded through his funding that he has in his budget for the year. He'll be able to cover the cost of this. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Motion to approve, Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Mrs. Boatright. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is 6.11. It is an update on the TMS schedule and curriculum. An update from our meeting last month as to the assembly and meeting of the committee to look at the schedule changes at TMS. And Mrs. Sullivan, I believe, is here this evening to give us an update.
After we met right before Thanksgiving, Dr. Bean and I reached out to some of our partners, and the DM group initiated work with the faculty at our faculty meeting last week. The next availability for our other partner, which is the Great Schools Partnership, specifically Christina Horner, who will be facilitating the work with the community group. Based on her availability, that community group will be meeting on Monday, and we will be taking the information garnered from both of those and moving forward to have better ideas of long-term and short-term solutions. Based on the information that Dr. B and I know already forwarded to you, she was looking at a February 1st deadline.
Are there any questions from the committee for Mrs. Sullivan? Okay. Seeing none, we can move on. Thank you. Next item up on the agenda is 6.12. This is a request for approval. There's a letter, this is a letter that was sent in to the city council that supports the work being done by the architectural firm Jade Studio that was selected to lead us in the necessary permitting and submittals to the state of Rhode Island for our issues regarding additional space here at Pell, the work at the high school, reconfiguring or rebuilding the high school, and et cetera. So this is the letter that went in, and it's just a motion to approve that this went to the city and the action that they'll be taking tomorrow evening on this. So if a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Boland, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Any discussion? Mr. Leary.
I have some serious concerns with this. I'm not sure, first of all, the council's taking action tomorrow. I'm not sure they are. My question first would be, and it's obviously you, being not day 11 on the school committee, or whatever is here. You're asking the city council to pay for the architect, is that what we're doing?
Well, this is a study, the cost, in discussion with the city council, it was suggested that we would present this to them to pay the cost. They are the landlords, they own the building, so it's really on behalf of the city, so that this would come out of the city funding rather than the school department funding, because it deals with the property that the schools are in. So they suggested that we submit that to them for them to cover the cost of the study. So yes, we are submitting it to them. Through discussion with the city, they felt that was the best action to take, so that's the action that we took.
So, I haven't been to those meetings, I'm not in that subcommittee, I know who is at this point, but are they talking a figure about $180 million? That's what I hear. Is that true or not?
I know of no figure that's been given for the,
Anybody, or no figure's been there? Is anybody in that subcommittee?
Yes, I have, and they've thrown out numbers from other cities and towns, not from this town.
But they haven't come up with a figure yet?
no, as far as
No.
I know, they haven't come up with a plan. I've been on the committee in just about every meeting. There is no plan as to how to proceed at the high school. So until that's developed and what the plan will be for either replacing, rebuilding, staying there, moving, there is no plan yet, so they can't put numbers on it until they have a plan.
So, to my knowledge, I believe we paid for Thompson on our side of the budget, and we also paid for Pell on our side of the budget. I think if we were gonna do this, we probably should have put the money on our side of the budget. I'm concerned if the number 180, wherever that's coming from, I'm not sure about districts, but you're talking over a 12 to a 14% tax increase for the people here paying taxes. I'm not sure the council is even, if I be talking about that with you, I hope they will, that's unrealistic. That's gonna force what middle class you have left out of Newport. You can't have a number like that. It's a 12 to a 14% tax increase, based on that number.
Mrs.
So
Bovary.
that being said,
On,
Oh,
being
sorry.
on the,
I thought he was done, I'm sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
I'm on, several of us are on the facilities committee, and really right now, what this is to do is to get something together that has numbers associated, that has options. The state report said two things. One is the Pell School is not large enough, and we need to have a decision within 2 years. I think we need to have urgency behind both of these two items. One is getting at least an alternative to the Pell growth thing, and Rogers being the worst school in the state of Rhode Island from a facility standpoint, we need to progress and come up with alternatives and put them before the city and the residents to make decisions. So that's what this is to be the next step for.
So would the architect be doing different things, like saying we can retrofit like we did Thompson? Or are they looking to do a whole new school? Or is that not decided yet?
You should come to the meetings.
No, I would summarize for the meetings that it has not been determined yet. I mean, they're very early in the stages, and as to what will be recommended, I think that is probably safe to say 3 to 4 months away at the earliest,
So
from what I heard last night at the meeting.
Help me out with what Ms. Bovary said, Mr. Galvin. Can more than 3 school committee members show up?
We're there.
At a scheduled meeting of, not the school committee, but a subcommittee? Certainly. You can participate, you can observe. You should not sit at the dais of the subcommittee meeting at the same table. You should be in the audience, and you're observing as a member of the public, but you're not participating. You should not participate as a member of the school committee.
So you can't ask questions, or?
You can ask questions, but you can't vote. You can't
Because if a vote is taken, it can only be the.
participate that way, but you can participate as a member of the public.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Okay, motion carries. Next item up is 6.13. It's a request for approval of the administrative structural chart that we have before us.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Mrs. Neary. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Leary.
So for the benefit of the public, again, could the superintendent explain what's going on briefly?
Mr. Leary, I just want to say that this will all be available to the public on the board docs. This was available, I believe, on board docs. This is in the public section, no?
It's in the public
Yeah, it's
section.
in public.
Oh, it is public section?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to get
So,
onto it and look.
It just seems like we vote a lot, they're number 13 now, and I don't know how many people know what's going on with it. Is there many changes with that for the public information?
No, thank you, Mr. Leary, just for the public and for those watching on television, this is just an org chart of the administration. And as we move forward, I just wanted to make sure roles and responsibilities were clear. And this was also, we have new members coming on board, also to help the new members to understand the organizational chart. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion, on discussion 7.1 is discussion of custodial staffing at Rogers High School. Dr. Jermaine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring to your attention, during the budgeting process of last year, and as Dr. Colley was putting in safeguards and different procedures, checks and balances, and as we move forward with this year's budget, we had a certain, I'll call it a learning curve as far as some of our staff, because now we're holding all our leaders, the people you see in the org chart, responsible for their staffing, financing, etc. The Rogers High School situation, there is a custodial, one member, one FTE of the custodial staff that was not included. And I do want to bring to everyone's attention that there is a need at Rogers High School in order to cover all the cleaning and the supports of the school. And we have been running, I believe, a substitute custodian from time to time just to keep up with it. And I'd be remiss if I did not bring this to your attention, because going forward for our staffing, and even now, I believe, Dr. Colley, we're going to look into it with Mr. Harab to see how we can better support the Rogers High School custodial staff. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is I did have a meeting with Mr. Harab and the plant engineers. We did talk about staffing, and we're going to be doing that on a regular basis. But I also wanted to bring to your attention that we're still looking at making certain that our schools and properties are ready during snowstorms. And we're looking at different ways we can help improve in that area. It was overwhelmingly the plant engineers, and Mr. Harab did point out to me the lack of equipment we have for snow removal comparatively to other similar districts and other areas. So that's something too we'll be bringing more back to you. But I just wanted to put it on the radar screen for everyone because it's such an important factor. And I believe how we take care of our buildings and being prepared on those bad weather days is a sign of who we are, what we're all about, and how we treat our staff and our children. And we want to make sure we have safe quarters at all times and clean quarters. So that's my speech for tonight, advocating for custodial staff.
Sure, Mrs. Neary.
Oh, question. Dr. Germain, what would be the full custodial staff necessary for a building the size and scopes of Rogers? What
do you say? How many more?
I mean, ideally.
I'm going to ask Dr. Colley come over because the request came before us and we're still going back and forth about the ideal custodial staffing. And just so everyone knows, Dr. Colley and Mr. Harab, our facilities director, they work very closely with one another as far as staffing needs, and Dr. Colley with the transportation as well. Thank you.
When you're looking at something like facilities, it's two parts you have to look at. One is what kind of facilities you're using or what the facilities are being used for in terms of what programs you have. The other one is the size of the facilities. I mean, you can go and just do a study based on the number of square feet times the number of staff times the number of hours. I know when you look at it from that point of view, you probably need at least another 5 custodians across the district. How to distribute them, that'd be a whole different story. Now, coming back to reality and our financial situation, I would say that probably would be out of the reach of the school district at this time. But in looking at just the number of staff versus the amount of just square footage of the buildings, I would say the high school does have the largest square footage of all the schools. I understand here at the elementary school, the kids spill stuff, they get sick, whatever. There's a lot of that. I used to be an elementary school principal. So that being said, we're thin. You know, we do not have the resources to add a whole bunch of more staff. But I would say the high school needs it. I would say after that, the elementary school. But to go to the whole, 5 custodians plus more supervisors, I don't think we can afford that.
How many do we have now? I'm sorry, because I don't have that data. How many custodial staff do we have now?
I believe it's 5 and 5, elementary and high school, and 4 at the middle school. You do have a plant engineer that also does some of the work in each of the buildings. So,
Okay.
oh yeah, and they do the annex as well over here.
Oh, and then I think one last question, because Dr. Germain, you mentioned equipment. What type of equipment do we need what are we using for snow removal? And I guess maybe I thought the city was providing that, so but that was as a member of the public, so could you educate me?
The city does help.
Okay.
But we do have a couple of vehicles that we use. One of them has a sander in the back. It just needs to get ready and out the door and filled. We go down and fill it at the depot. We don't have our own sand, but we do go get it. It's, and then we have to go refill it. So it takes away from the people who would be at the school actually shoveling, running the snow blowers, those kind of things. So we do get stretched very thin when big snowstorms come.
And those never happen in New England, never. We never get snowstorms.
I'm from the south. I'm hoping for no snow this year.
Okay, thank you.
I know that
Mrs. Boland.
in a recent snowstorm, one of our custodians brought in his own snow blower.
Right.
Because it was much more efficient than what we owned.
Bless you. Plows too,
Any other questions?
plowing,
Any other
especially the
discussion?
parking lots.
Okay, great. Next item. 7.2 is the technology 5-year replenishment plan.
Hello, everybody. My name's Patrick Kangede. I'm the Director of IT for Newport Public Schools. I have a quick presentation. Some of you...
Patrick, they're going to have to hear your name again. Sorry.
Patrick Kangede. You can call me Patrick. So I have a quick presentation. Some of you have seen this presentation before. It started back in November of 2015, where a strategic group was formed based on the 5-year strategic plan. And one of the main focuses was technology in the classroom. The school committee approved the strategic plan November 2016. And then the implementation plan started in March 2017. There was a budget approval May of 2017. Technology director was appointed September of 2017. We had our first round of technology, which included 750 Chromebooks, 143 teacher laptops, 68 projection devices, PD in the classroom, and we also had a tech advisory group. Come August 2018, we were awarded by the city $800,000 which enabled us to procure more Chromebooks, more laptops, more projection devices, and we are gaining momentum when it comes to technology in the classroom. But we still have some needs. We do need technology integrationists, preferably for all the 3 buildings. We need someone to work with the teachers so that teachers are comfortable using the tools that we've so far provided to them. So currently, students have access to the Chromebooks. We have different programs going on at each and every building. We have blended learning. We did see highlights of the Highlander grant, what they're doing with Fuse Architect. We have other pilot programs which were being piloted last year, but now they're in full progress, like Achieve 3000. We also have other online programs, math, web-based tools like Accelerated Math. We have some PD going on at each and every school, but it's not, we need to do a little bit better when it comes to PD. We do have the tools available, but PD is needed. So our priority is making sure teachers have the PD that they need. So that's why we are requesting for technology integrationists. We also need a replacement plan. We need to make sure that the tools that we're providing to the teachers are in good working condition at all times. So we've started having conversations on the budget. I'm working on my technology budget numbers as we speak, so that we can continue having those conversations. We're also working on a service desk that's going to be efficient. Right now, we have a program where we've partnered with some of the P-Tech, NACTech students, and they're helping out with some of the help desk items. I have a graph here showing the usage of the Chromebooks. As of December 2nd, we are at the 2,000 mark, showing that the Chromebooks are being used in the classroom. On the next page, page 5, is a quick snapshot of the 5-year replenishment plan. We started in 2017. We were awarded 600,000. The year 2017-18, 18-19, we were awarded 800,000. We are requesting an ongoing budgetary number of about 300,000 to continue supporting with the one-to-one initiative. Main focus is professional development, so we do need to have technology integrationists working with our teachers. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
So I just have a couple on number 5, page 5.
Yep.
Patrick, could you explain that a little bit? Because you said the ask was approximately 300,000 for technology. I don't.
Is that for 2017, 2018 or 2018, 2019?
2019, so next year, 2019, 2020.
So where is that shown on that spreadsheet?
Column year 3.
Year 3.
Year 3 total equipment, is that the
Yeah,
number you're talking about? It's right there.
Yeah, total equipment.
That's the number.
Yes.
So what would the line for the Tech OpEx be?
So that's the operational budget. That's my salary, my team salary, services that we pay for, internet service, different web tools that we have in place, the month-to-month bills that we pay on a monthly basis.
And the Tech Integrator, where is that in that?
That number is included in there.
So the Tech Integrator is included in that?
824 number, yeah.
So could you take a minute to explain 1718, the tech op number is 290,124,
Yes.
and this year it shows it as 824,713.
Yeah, this year the 824,713 includes the 3 technology integrationists, but we don't have those people, those individuals in place.
So we won't be spending that amount this year, so
No.
that's an inaccurate amount at the moment.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. That's all I have. Anybody else? Mrs. Boatright?
I just have a question on, I guess I was surprised to see that that the carts have to be replaced so frequently and the projection devices. I understand with Chromebooks that they're going to break and a lot of usage, but I was surprised to see some of these other things needing replacement so frequently. Can you address that, please?
Sure. So we live in a world where technology is changing daily, on a daily basis. Case an example, we all have smartphones. 6 months from now, you get a request to update your software. You can only do so much updates on your software before the hardware starts to fail. So we taking that concept in place. That's why we are hoping to be able to replace the devices before they start failing on us, so that they can be efficiently be used in the classrooms.
So you're talking the carts are technology-based and the projectors are outdating?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I understand that you'd want to rotate, but I would have thought they'd be on a 5-year basis or something like that. But you're
So the Chromebook cards will be we'll be adding more cards every year. So as we replace or add cards, and we've had some incidents where cables are broken on some of the cards, so we're taking some of that into account. We're still learning on what percentages or replacement percentage we'll have in place, but this is just to call for a budgetary number that we can work with.
Mr. Leary?
How are you, Patrick?
Good.
Nice meeting you. Question, didn't the city council, when they gave us the money last year, or gave the school committee money last year, said we were supposed to establish a line item for replacement of the Chromebooks?
Correct.
Did they say how much that was gonna be?
No, they never give us a number.
So you're saying $300,000?
Approximately that amount.
I don't want to be in your parade, and I said this earlier, you're gonna see, the city right now has frozen everything. They got fire trucks that are older, using backup fire trucks. The hook and ladder, Mr. Gomes, ex-fire, we know that, it's almost 30 years old, it's almost done. They're in serious trouble, the police department, the people in the city office, and these people come and tell you, they can't get paper, they're blaming it on the school committee for freezing everything. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, I'm sure you do, but I think a $300,000 line item is something we got to seriously look at here, because I don't think we're going to be able to come close to that. In fact, and I might be wrong, but when we have a financial advisory committee meeting, I think the recommendation will be to cut each school by 3 to 5%. Because we're in serious financial trouble. There's no question in my mind. And, and if I'm not, I'm out of here. But we got troubles. And I don't know how we're going to give you an extra $300,000. We need to establish a line item. That may be just for Chromebooks. It may be $100,000 because we told the council we're going to do that, and we need to do that. I'm not sure $300,000 is going to come in at all. That's just me speaking. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mrs. Neary.
Hello, Patrick. Nice
Hi.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Professional development.
Yes.
Is there, I know you need a body, like 3 bodies, apparently. Have you started or have you looked at software to deliver it via video or via like YouTube videos or Citrix or WebEx or any other models?
Yes, we do have software in place that can assist, but most of our customers they need that one-to-one assistance or group assistance so that we can get them going.
Right.
If we hand them a video or some material on their own, it tends to be a little bit of a challenge.
Right. No, I mean, I understand it's not ideal, but to think of what Mr. Leary is saying, that we may not get funding, I would just suggest to continue to develop those tools because you may not get a body.
Yep.
So that's
Sure.
what I'm saying.
Yep.
How many Chromebooks per cart?
25.
25. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Great, thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There'll be other questions.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is 8.0, it's a consent agenda. 8.1, approval of the minutes. Motion would be in order to,
Mr. Chair, I move the minutes be approved.
motion to approve the minutes by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm going to stay, Mr. Chairman, because I wasn't part of the committee when you did those minutes.
Okay, so the one abstention, motion to approve is on a 6-0 vote with one abstention. Next item is 8.2, the consent personnel agenda, personnel actions.
Mr. Chair, I move that the appointment, transfers, leave of absence, resignation, retirement, seeking advice and consent from the superintendent be approved with the exception of A7.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve the personnel, personnel actions in their entirety with the exception of A7, which will be removed, made by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 8.3, approval of invoices and requisitions. Dr. Colley has several lines of requisitions, invoices to be approved this evening. Is there a motion on these?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by,
No.
Yep.
Dr. Flower.
oh, I'm sorry.
Voice changed.
I know my voice is deep, but
It was a kind of from down there. That's why. I'm sorry. Dr. Flowers, seconded by Mrs. Neary. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
in essence
Leary.
of time, I know it's very late, I just have three. One that's what I need Patrick here for. So when I printed this out, 8.3, and I called Kathy shortly after, so I was kind of in shock. And I had not known where it's at, and I tried to find a backup. On item 21 and 22, it says legal services, 17,000, and then 60,000. So I was saying $67,000 for legal service. I want to have a breakdown. So I couldn't get a breakdown, so this is where you're going to come in, Patrick. So I called up Kathy, and she said, oh, you have to go to Google. It's not in board docs. You have to go to Google. There's 4 or 5 dots. You open the triangle. You do this, you do that. And she walked me through it. I didn't succeed. So I said, let me call Becky Bowen. She's a little better at technology. And Becky, to my knowledge, didn't succeed either. To me, it was very complicated just to get a breakdown of what bills was, why is that? And in the end, she told me the $60,000 was just for an open-end thing that the business manager wanted, that he doesn't have to come back to us to get it. But the 17 was payment, and I just wanted to know why, what the 17, what was it for? Was it phone calls, was it special ed, was it who's doing what? And I never got the answer. So is there a way, Patrick, where you can put this on board docs? I mean, it seems like am I wrong, Mrs. Boland, or what?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It'd just be so much easier to go to one place to look for this information, would be to find it on board docs. That would be because at one point we asked for, this was a couple years ago, that every month we'd be given the receipts for the lawyer bills. And so they've been coming, but they've been coming every couple months maybe. But it's just harder to find it, to go on to Google Docs and to board docs. It's easier to go to one source when you're researching things, that's all.
So, again, I'm going to ask Dr. Colley, because I think there's some confusion. Could you explain what these are for what we have in front of us?
So, as you remember, at the last school committee meeting, you requested that we institute a freeze. When we did that, there were some requisitions, for example, that had not been approved, meaning they're in the system as a requisition. It does reserve the funds out of the available. However, it can't move to actual payment or to request the service to be provided or the materials to be provided until it moves to a purchase order, which, understanding what the school committee wanted to do, I'm bringing it before you. These are the things that I would be doing on my side of the table, looking at, okay, evaluating each one of these. Does it make sense? Is it fit within the budget that we have? And is it something that's necessary? These are the ones that, for example, you have the legal services. There's two parts to that, and Mr. Leary is correct. The $17,000 is for bills we had already received, but we hadn't paid at the time. The requisitions in the system, we can't pay the bills until it becomes a purchase order and gets accepted. What I had requested was when there were things where we knew that, let's say for legal services, $100,000 in the actual line for the budget, but we know we're going to use a large portion of that, it's a lot easier to encumber it so we don't think about spending it twice, so to speak. You basically encumber it, it reserves it, and as the bills come in, you pay against that encumbrance. That's what the $60,000 is for. It's called a drawdown purchase order. And you have a few others in there that would work in similar ways. For example, the Cox Communication is one. Looks rather big, but we're not going to pay Cox $41,000 right off the bat. As the bills come in, we'll use that account and that purchase order to pay those. The ones you see at the bottom are bills that came in the last, I would say since the last school committee meeting, that didn't even make it to getting a purchase order in place. In some cases, there were no purchase orders, and so I was able to list them so that you could say, yes, please, let's pay these bills. There's some that are substantial. For example, sped transportation. We had a transition of two administrators coming, well, and an interim in between in that department, and that needed to be encumbered, but without a person to actually push the button, it never even got to the encumbrance phase. So that's where the sped transportation is and why it's so large, because it's actually 4 months worth. And again, a lot of these are bills that have come in since. My hope is that once these are paid, we won't have as many in future months because, again, most of it should have been encumbered already. We did run into a glitch this past week where some of the staff at the buildings, secretaries, were contacting me saying, you don't have some of my requisitions listed. And I was very honest. I told them they were not in the system, or at least I couldn't see them. We went to the city. The city had to contact Lawson. Lawson had to get involved. All of a sudden, I went from 30 requisitions to 57 yesterday. So all of a sudden, magically, we had a whole bunch of requisitions that Lawson couldn't move along the process. So you will see some for next month. I just, I can't help what Lawson can't do.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we could just, so in essence for Patrick, can we go back to that first part of my question that's still on the floor? Is it possible, Kathy, you two could work together and get this so you click on 55571, 55571, and then I open it up and it's going to give me a detail of Galvin law, what we paid him? Or do I have to go through all these steps and try to find it and nobody can find it today? And I think other people have tried too. Is that possible, Patrick? You guys can work together and get that? So when I open up on Board Docs, you click on it, and then you instead of closing out and going in, going through 10 steps trying to find what the detail was, that you put it right next to it, and then you click right next to it and say, okay, here's the 17,000, here's what we did, here's what we paid. And I'm sure it's a detailed bill, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
I hope so. I want to see
they
how
are
much.
Mr.
public
Leary,
record.
as we talked about earlier, we'll make sure that you get the legal bills. I'll.
No, that's
distribute.
legal, it's just legal bills, other things too when you get here, but is that possible, Patrick?
Yeah, we can,
Is that possible?
we can try to figure out a system that's
great.
gonna be easy, to show the bills and all the details. We can work on figuring
So
some
it's easy, just click
system.
on one to the other and then give you a detail what it is.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's all I need to know. I don't want to put you on the spot when you go there.
Dr. Flowers.
Can I
I'm
finish?
sorry, Mr. Leary, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I thought
wanna
you were
finish.
done. I
I'm
thought you said
sorry.
thank you, so.
No, and it's not about legal bills. See, I was confused. Now, you just brought up another one. I was going to ask you about the 41,800 for Cox. We're trying to encumber that line item. So we don't even know that when I got this here. So I have two other ones I have real serious questions on. And then you got to find out which one's encumbered and which one's not encumbered. If you voted for a freeze and it's frozen, you got to know that. So what is, and this is a very important one, what is cell phones? Who has cell phones for $16,000? Is that a month, is that a year, is that a week?
No, that would also be an encumbrance for the year. It just wasn't done.
Encumbered for
And-
a year.
Yeah, and
Who has those?
I'll be honest,
You don't know? I do. Okay.
we sent it to the superintendent because she
Yes, I
had,
can do it at
she
another
asked at one
time.
point in time.
I just
Yeah.
to me, all I see is 16,000. I couldn't open up. I don't know where the breakdown is. And to me, it's a problem. It's a year thing on there. The last one, in essence, the time everybody else, the $21,000 for college boards, number 74. And there's a lot more I have on, believe me. But, so do we pay for everybody's college boards ticket? AP
That-
testing?
That is what they are asking for, yes.
That was actually approved on when you were on the school committee.
So that is correct, that's a follow, thank you, Mr. Gomes, I appreciate that. So when we followed up with that, we approved that, we did that for a reason. The reason was very clear. We wanted to see how they're doing on the test, okay? And we studied it for 3 or 4 years. I thought we dropped it, it never got dropped, that's fine. That is what it is, you know? But, so we need to know, this year when it's done, everybody took the AP test in every single score. Okay? Because is it worth up $21,000? For example, here's why I say it wouldn't be worth. I'll give you examples why it also would be worth. You know, where it wouldn't be worth is we had 19 people who take the AP in math, and this is back 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I was on the committee. All 19 got a 1. Every one got a 1. It's record, go look it up. So it said to us, whoa, we got a problem here. Okay? So I'm not saying that's the case here, but if we're going to pay for it, I want to see the results. That's an obligation to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Dr. Flowers.
Thank you. Just going back to items 21 and 22 that Mr. Leary brought up, I would like, first of all, when we get the bills that come from Mr. Galvin, everything is broken down. I think it's been going on for years, and quite often it gives us the cost of emails and phone calls. And this is something that I've been addressing now for probably about 8 years, that perhaps, and I'm just saying perhaps, if any of us on the committee have a question that really should be addressed by legal, perhaps our questions can all go to the chair and/or the superintendent. One of them make the call or put in the email, and that would probably cut down on some of the expenses. Maybe not too much, but you know, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, it adds up to big money after a while. I just think that's an important point. Thank you.
Mrs. Boatright.
Right. So you've said that there's some things that are, you put in as encumbered and some things that are actual expenses, right?
So the ones that you see down at the bottom, they're all expenses bills that we've received
Right.
since last school committee meeting.
Okay, but the total that you put in to be encumbered, is that 300,000 number in the bottom of the summary?
So I did have a question along Mrs. Boatright's lines, is when you look at 21 and 22, for instance, line 21 and 22, it sounds like the $17,000 is a bill, but it's next to an encumbered, but it's in the encumbered. I'm a little confused by the placement of it.
The issue is you have, the way the system works is you put in a requisition before you can ask for a service or pay for anything. So when we stopped the process and said, no, it's going to come to school committee, there were some things already in the system that I would have just pushed the button, reviewed the bills, accepted the bills, and it would have been PO'd and paid already. The one for 60,000 would have stayed in the system as a purchase order that would be open. You necessarily wouldn't have seen the 17,000 because that would have been very quick. The bill is here, we simply go through the purchase order, it gets paid within a week, it goes into the expensed or the spent line on your budget report, and you wouldn't even see it. The 60,000 would stay there as an encumbrance, so you know that you're reserving that amount to pay for the rest of the year, some of those legal bills we know we're gonna have, just based on past history and knowing that we are also going to be going into negotiations, having some of that fun.
So just, can I finish
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
questions? Last time, I wasn't here at this table, but I was out there, but it was like 8 million had not yet been encumbered. And yet you had thought another at least million was going to be encumbered. So you've put a few things in this report, like legal services and so on, but I think what we're trying to accomplish is getting a better view as to the overall budget of the Newport Public Schools, right? So if there are things that could be encumbered, like you just said, I would think we would want to see all those things so they could be paid normally by the school department, not by the school committee. Is there a way you could give everybody one more last chance to put in all that encumbered stuff so that could come to us? Because I really think that's the goal. We want the process to be followed properly by the, all the administrators and departments and individuals. We want to give them, empower them, but we just need to know that we don't go over the number. So I'm asking that you come to us with as much that could be encumbered at this point in time. And I'm asking the chair and the committee the same thing, because our goal is to know how much is going to be spent by the end of the year as soon as we can. And it would be way better to have the process continue. Do you follow me?
So here's the challenge. Go ahead.
So the challenge is, well, we've both been dealing with that for the last couple of months. The challenge has been, we have asked all the department heads to go through and look at what happened last year in terms of what did they spend money on, how much money did they spend, can they use that to project what they're going to spend this year, and then put in purchase orders or encumbrances to reserve that amount aside so that, like you said, we are more able, we're better able to predict where we may be 3 months from now, 4 months from now. And June is way too late to try to predict.
Right.
So here's a really recent good example. So the schools have activities, and they need custodians. So when their yearly events come up or traditional events come up that they're putting on for the community and all that, the principal looks at the facilities director looks at the principal and says, that's in your budget. No, it's not. So those are the discussions, and that's what's happening. Everyone with all good intention believes they have encumbered everything they need, and they think they've budgeted, but when we start to get a bill or someone says, we get this, no, she's paying that, no, he's paying that. And that's what we're going through right now.
One other caveat that I'm going to put out there is there are some things that are more difficult to predict than others, and some people who are more reluctant to put a number out there, because I think they feel like if they put the number out there, we're gonna hold them accountable if that number is over, under, or whatever. So there are some people that I have asked several times to put encumbrances, and they just kind of refuse. Utilities, for example. So it becomes a little bit more difficult when you have that kind of pushback, again, because we have not really done this before, to encumber everything that can be encumbered. So there are some people who have never worked under those conditions, and they're just not used to it and don't want to.
Right. Well, I still think that we should try, I'm asking the committee here to make a request that you work one more time to say that, you know, the school committee wants this process to be followed. It's very important to get people used to doing these POs so that we can next year see in October what the expected expenditures are going to be. So I think that, you know, the request would still be to probably come back here maybe, and maybe there are some that people are uncomfortable with and they want to say there's a range or something, and we can then make a decision to set it as a number. I don't know if that's possible, but I just think we need to be getting, we need to not stop this process from working. We need to get a process that will be a continued process within the school system to get a handle on the budget early. And by stopping it, I think we are could cause some problems.
Hopefully.
I have a little quick one here.
Mrs. Bowles.
So, I mean, the example of the lawyer was a good one that Bobby made, because, I mean, we couldn't tell, like, basically what you're trying to do is encumber. So maybe if you'd split these up by this is an actual bill and this is what I'm trying to encumber now. For instance, the cell phone bills, basically, we don't have a $16,000 cell phone bill right now, you're just encumbering. So I think there was confusion on that, but I will ask on one question. On line 51, it says computers for lunch program at ATG services. Is that new computers? And what?
The ones that you see over there that,
Yeah.
that hold the program for NutriKids are so old, they cannot even be
So
updated
why is that
anymore.
not coming out of the Fund 60?
Basically because, one, it's not a, it can come out of Fund 60, but we do not have the funding in Fund 60 to carry that kind of a cost. Whereas I know in technology, there is a line for technology.
Because that seems like a legitimate cost for Fund 60 once we get things
It would be.
straightened out there.
It would be.
Yeah, and at the end of the year, we will have more money in there. So I'm just saying, it's something we might want to think about switching over.
It's one of those things that, you know, and this is why, you know, who wants to make those decisions, school committee? You can pull that one and say, change it, move it to 60.
Just trying to put it in the right, you know, put it in the legitimate category. If you wanted us to switch it to 60, I'd make that motion.
You can, I just don't think you're gonna have the kind of money in Fund 60 you think you're going to have. I think you're gonna end up with a deficit again.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion if you want.
You can put a motion, if it goes negative, we just cover it in the fund.
Okay, so,
Transfer.
all right, I make a motion to move line number 51 to Fund 60, and pending the ability to pay, pending available funds.
Well, at this point, those computers need to be replaced
So you
because
can do-
otherwise,
So you would have
They
to
won't
pay
be
for,
working.
so this is something we should do in June then, maybe?
well, we were looking for monies to do it last year when we saw that
Right.
the Fund 60 was gonna be in deficit. We decided not to do it this year.
You gotta do it.
We're,
All right, so do you want us to do that at the end of the year? All right, let's just wait, I'll take that off, and we'll wait to the end of the year to see if there's money there to do it.
My motion's gonna be a little different.
Mr. Leary.
I'm gonna just want to have him make a motion that we do the pending requisitions that has out, and all the ones that are incumbent, I don't know how many there are, two we've brought to our attention, be held for another time when we discuss those. So I don't know which ones are which here until I get a breakdown. You know, so if anybody got a second for that, if you don't, it goes.
Second?
So what I'm trying to do is just, you can pay all the ones that are pending, okay? All the ones you need incumbent line items for, we need to look at them next month. It's not saying do anything with them, we're just gonna hold on to them and discuss them. So I don't know which ones are, which ones are not. I wanna break down to them.
Will the
And by the
encumber-
way, years ago, we had, I will bring to your office, I have every single financial record from every year I've been here. I will bring to your office that we had incumbent line items. I don't know where they disappeared to, but we had them.
So, just so I'm very clear, Mr. Leary, you're saying, pay the bills you have, the invoices you have now.
Correct.
And then any and all of those figures that are encumbrances, bring those back.
Correct, which would be like,
Thank
first
you.
page, line 7, and then line 23. I'm sorry, 22. So that would be the ones that then we could file, what's incumbent, what's involved with them, and who's responsible for them. I'm not, you want to vote for it anyway, I'm not going to vote for it the way it's set now, period. Approve it.
Motion's been made and seconded to pay the bills that are in front of us and have the encumbered items brought back with more explanation at a later meeting. Did I get
And-
that right, Mr.
Correct.
Leary?
Can I add to that motion
Just a
as I
moment,
had?
please, just a moment. Made by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mrs. Boland. Discussion on the motion. Mrs. Boatright.
I just want to add that not just those that are there, but as many as they can pull forward. We would like to have as many things that you can get to encumber on that report as well.
No problem with amendment.
Any other discussion? That's not amended, that's fine. It's kind of the same motion.
Yep.
Any other discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next one is monthly correspondence, 9.1. In 9.1, we have a letter, we have a letter from the Van Buren Charitable Foundation to inform us that they have pleased to inform me that the foundation meeting of $54,000 grant payable to Newport Public Schools was approved to support classroom setup and compression tool systems for the new Marine Career Pathway at the Newport Area Career and Technical Center. So once again, Van Buren, one of our charitable partners, very charitable partners, has extended a grant to us for the Marine Trades pathway at the Career Technical School.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that the letter be received with appreciation.
Motion made to receive the letter with appreciation. Seconded by Dr. Flowers. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll move on now to reports, section 10, reports from the superintendent. 10.1, the expenditure and revenue reports. Generally, Dr. Colley will answer any questions we may have on that. I will remind everybody that we are approaching our 9:30 time limit, so we'll keep an eye on that. But other than that, Dr. Colley, would you like to say anything before we ask questions?
Just, there was a quick question that came up today about one of the items that was requested to be adjusted on this report was to try to go back and look at, can we match the amounts spent in 18 with the lines for 19? I guess I should have put under actual spent, encumbered, requested, total reserve, budgeted, remaining, FY19. So the FY18 spent is just there for your reference, so you can see last year, even though we went over our budget, this is what we spent in those lines, so you can see the comparison of where we are this year so far against what we spent last year. Not what was budgeted, but what was actually spent in those lines.
Mrs. Sylvia.
Would it be difficult to move, okay, after FY18, then put the next column, FY19 budgeted?
No.
So then we
that can be
see
moved.
the difference there. And I had a question on another column too. I don't remember what it was now, but at least we'd know the difference there.
Okay. And I'll put the FY19 on top of those columns, just so everybody can see that and make it easier.
I
never thought of
I didn't
it.
know why we were getting FY18, and I'm saying,
But
what is all this?
But I just want to make the comment, though, because your total reserve being next to total budget is kind of nice to see it right there. I mean, knowing what that FY18 is good, what you spent, but you really want next to each other typically where you expect to be next to your budgeted item, because that's what's most critical, right? So these two are next to each other.
Yeah, but they can go over here.
Oh.
That's what we spent, the 290. I thought, and then if we have 219, what was budgeted, and then we can go from there. You can put the total reserve next to it. What's the difference between encumbered and total reserved?
So where you have the total reserve, it actually accounts for what's spent, what's encumbered, and what's been requested. So basically, that's the line that gives you the best estimate of where you're going to be in June 30th in terms of your expenditures for that line. So if you get any surprises and you didn't encumber everything you needed to encumber, that's where you're going to see the surprises come when you get closer to the end of the year. Somebody says, oh, I have another bill, goes into that line, and all of a sudden it goes over what you had budgeted. You'll see the negative coming out and remaining unrequested.
I'm sorry, I missed something. Encumbered is what you saved.
That's what
We
you're
have the
expecting
actual
to
spend. Encumbered, right, so what is, I don't understand, is no, the reserve's not the total of those two, is it?
Yes,
It is,
it's a
okay.
total of all three of them.
I get it now.
Requested, encumbered, and
against
total
current
spent.
budget.
It's add 'em up.
So the 2018 spent is just there for you to have as a,
Right, but I know that, but it never marked 219 and, okay, it was, just got a little confusing earlier.
all the rest is 2019.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one.
Mrs. Boland?
Okay, I'm just gonna harp one more time. We've only got until like January 15th to get in all of the impact aid forms. Let's not leave money on the table. We have 349 forms out at the high school. We have no forms out at Pell.
Yeah, Pell was really good. They
Yeah,
got them all in.
they get the gold star.
And Thompson's
Thompson's
getting
close.
closer, because I did get a few more this week. So as they get them, they put them in a package. I get them every Friday. The other thing I wanted to point out is under the revenue, you do have about $185,000 that we did not expect to get this year
From what?
from tuitions to
Oh,
NACTAC.
tuition. Okay,
However, at the same time, we have more tuitions going out. So when you look under teaching and learning, which we pay the tuitions from, you're gonna see that as a balance.
So I'll now ask our superintendent, do we have a plan for how we're going to give a push to the high school to get that?
I have already talked to Mr. Vance, and he's assured me he's going to work with the coaches, and he's working with the crew teams on this. And I think there's some initiative he's putting forward for them to bring them all in.
As long as he knows the deadline, too. for getting them in.
He knows the deadline.
It's a lot
And
of
he
money.
sees the percentage his school has brought in.
Yeah, a lot of money left on the
And
table.
it's both schools, NACTAC and the high school. I mean, I'm sure the kids go back and forth, but I'm hoping that the two of them can work together to bring them in.
Competition.
So could you, what, I know, Mr. Boland just said, what is the date that those are due?
I have to have them by January 15th. It takes about a week to actually put the report together. It's not a fun thing to do. And then it has to be to the state or to the federal government by the 31st.
So I would say that we are probably gonna take some sort of action if that doesn't improve. So could we ask for a weekly update on where we are with that from now until the end of December? Because I really feel like we're gonna have to do something. You know, we can't have those forms sitting out there at that number. With that age group, I just find it very, very hard to believe that the oldest kids in our system, we can't get them to bring a form back to school.
That's usually the way it is.
I understand that, but it's baffling to me.
not the little ones.
You know, so, maybe we could all split up in, what's that, be 50 forms each, and we could walk through the school and get them to bring them back, maybe, so. I'm not sure what action we'll take, but maybe we'll go visit our students.
Right, hasn't there been some incentive program in the past? I think Mrs. Bolin has,
I always got them all.
in other meetings, there have been some incentive programs, like you can not go to homecoming, I mean, we're beyond homecoming, but something to,
That's a negative incentive.
well, you can go to some, yeah, but whether there could be some event planned, or I don't know, but something to create a positive incentive, I think should be considered.
That would also go along with the only 52% of the lunch forms into, which we are bleeding up there. We are hemorrhaging daily.
We need some creativity.
Well, we can hire a collection agency. Get on the news.
information. You got it?
Okay,
Okay,
so are we
Mrs.
next?
Sylvia? what
Are
would you
we
like?
ready to move on?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to move that items 10.2 through 10.7 be received. Unless-
Motion been made and seconded by Mrs. Sylvia, seconded by Dr. Flowers.
Yes.
Be what are you doing with them?
Motion
You
to
pay attention.
accept them as reported.
I have one question on 10.2. Dr. Colley, if you can get me a printout of every single grant, detail of every grant. Now, and I want to see the sunset, non-sunset on it, and go through each one.
Do you want, what exactly you want
I
for
want
the
a detail
printout?
of every single grant.
You have it.
Look, it's right over here.
No,
Bobby,
is that every one of them?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's the,
You
where's
gotta
the
get on,
P-TECH?
you
Where's the
gotta,
P-TECH guy?
you gotta
He
get
is
on your
hired a grant.
computer.
They're in there.
No, his grant, that grant expired last year. That
So
grant,
when it expired, we paid him?
yes.
Yeah,
it
once-
comes out of our
Yes,
budget.
we sustained it through the tuitions coming in.
Yeah.
All right, see, I didn't know this. Sometimes the information's not there.
Yeah.
That's one. All right, thank you.
Because a school committee member wanted a sustainability plan. So we made sure, Mr. Leary, that we followed that school committee's
Begin date,
man's
end date.
direction to have a sustainability
Well, that's
plan.
great. I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at all of them, but,
Okay, I just have one more, and I know you're going to kill me, but I just want to point out on the enrollment reports, thank you very much for every month telling us about all the movement within the district. Last month, I pointed out that 67 kids came in and out, and we wanted to see if that was an anomaly, or if that was, and it's not. This month is 66, in and out.
Terrific. So we have a motion to accept the reports as reported. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting dates, I just closed the binder, but we
I
have
move to receive.
received the meeting dates. They're right there if you want to read them, that's great. Motion been made and seconded.
All in favor.
No, any questions? Seeing,
agenda items? Oh, is that on part 11 now, or no?
yes, sir.
that's-
Item
So how
11.
about three things for the agenda for next month? One would be to review the test results to include the last 3 years of POC and the last 3 years of NECAP for a discussion item. And then on an action item, I want to request from the Newport City Council that a member of the business office sit in on all negotiations with TN and Council 94. So they'd be present at the voice. I know we're separate bodies, and I know this committee may not agree to it, but I just want to put it there for an action item. And last,
Mr. Could I just
So
ask, what if the city refuses to do it? It doesn't matter what we want.
well, they could do, yeah, they could say absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
so if you can find out if you had advisory committee, I was going to ask that meeting yesterday, but I thought there was a meeting, I showed up with 2 other parents because it was online, but there was no meeting for the school committee, city council advisory committee.
There's that liaison, that was a misprint, it shouldn't have.
Yeah, it was a meeting, a couple of parents showed up, and I was there too, and there was nobody was there.
We were going to have
It was
it.
printed online, it was also
It
printed.
was? It says it
on
online.
Newport.
I've
But
read it.
anyways, that's not the problem, I would have asked that question then, so I need to ask that now, or somebody ask the council. The last and most important, I wanted
Did
to
the
action
city
item.
have it on theirs?
Just a minute,
We
okay,
didn't-
it may
just a
have
minute,
been on.
please. Just a minute, please. There's 4 people talking.
I know.
We're just trying to get through this.
Yeah, we're almost, my last
Mr.
one,
Leary.
I want an action item for a forensic audit put on the agenda.
Okay?
I'm good.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made to adjourn, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus to all of us.
What is it, next?
Thank you.
Is that the Seinfeld episode?
Yes, Festivus for the rest of us.
Is it Wednesdays? Wednesdays I didn't do, okay.
Please also, because of the holidays and all the different events going on, please be mindful that you have a very busy schedule and there are lots of events going on.
Why are you talking into the microphone? There's 7 of us here.
There's gonna be a lovely
I don't wanna
concert
yell.
at St. Joseph's Saturday.
Getting together.